We all have those games that just scream childhood to us. Games which have been completely rooted in your brain, no matter whether they were bad or good, because simply seeing or hearing that game brings you back to simpler times. It could just be a piece of music that brings us back, or seeing a specific character or location. But these childhood games hold a special place in our hearts. So today, I'm bringing you one of my childhood games. Soul Blade for the PS1. Now I know what you're thinking, Scarfulhu. This isn't even a point and click. Not even a PC game. What's wrong with you? What? I can't have layers? Ah yes, Soul Blade, the precursor to the beloved Soul Calibur series. If Soul Blade doesn't ring any bells, then maybe you know it as Soul Edge. But it's the same game, and the same series. And I think some people forget that sometimes. The game was released on PS1 in January of 1997, which is exactly the same month and year as I was released. We twinsies. And of course the game was published by good old Namco. As a kid, this game blew my mind. While a lot of fighting games I had played at the time were locked to 2D planes, this one fully utilised the 3D environments, which was awesome. I loved the characters and I loved the stages, and it was just so dear to me. But I really want to know how it holds up now. I mean, as a kid I didn't really have the best taste in games, I'll be honest. The game begins with an FMV intro that's actually pretty good. None of that creepy, uncanny valley Tekken stuff. I swear the FMV in Tekken 2 scared me as a kid to the point of never actually wanting to play the game. Seriously, Heihachi spooked me. Maybe it's just my nostalgia talking, but this intro has so much emotion behind it. I think it might also be due to the fact that the theme, which is called Edge of Soul, is just so brilliant. If you're a long-term fan of my videos, you might recognise that I used this theme in my first 2 top 10 videos. That's how much I love this theme. Here we're introduced to the cast of characters, and without any word it tells you who they are and why acquiring the legendary Soul Edge is so important to them. You can see that Taki is a demon slayer, Seung Mina has this Mulan thing going on, Voldo just likes flipping about like the awesome weirdo he is. And how about Rock with his adopted son, Bangu? Bangu! Oh, bless him. He's a big softy, that one. So starting off we'll go into arcade mode because that's the mode I remember the most and it's basically the first thing you'll go to. Arcade mode is just your basic ladder system, you know? Fight all these characters that get progressively harder and harder to fight until you fight the malevolent spirit within the Soul Edge itself. You'll start off being all cocky and thinking, hey, this is easy, but by the last fight you'll be getting pretty upset about that damn skeleton jelly thing. I think I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but I don't necessarily review games like this often, or at all. So I'm just playing this by ear and seeing what happens, I suppose. Now as a kid I always played Cervantes. Cervantes is a Spanish pirate with 2 swords, an amazing little beard, and the coolest win lines.
Offer your spirit.
What's your poison? Rum? Tequila? I'm more of a bourbon man myself. And he also has this super badass laugh. Maybe that would creep some kids out, but that was my character. That was me. Cervantes was my main man. He's got a damn sassy outfit and moveset too. Strong, but not too slow. Also, I've never really bothered to learn the combos for the characters in this game, but I never found them that necessary anyway. Basically, if you learn to block, crouch, and use the right attacks at the right time, you can eventually beat an opponent, no matter how much they might suck to play against sometimes. All the characters in this game are brimming with personality, and you can see this in their win animations and fighting styles. For instance, we can see that Huang is a bit of a cocky guy. So, Huang, how high can you hold your leg? Hey! Oh, I see, yeah, okay. It's fascinating, yeah. Relearning the gameplay here reminded me how fun this game is. The basics are that triangle is a vertical attack, square is a horizontal attack, circle is a kick, and X is guarding. It doesn't deviate too far from the norm there, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. One thing I really like about this game over other fighting games I've played is the combat is really quick and visceral. You've really got to be on your toes or else you get taken advantage of. For instance, if you lie on the ground a little too long, you might get beaten while you're down. A little bit rude, but you know. But if you are down, you can also take advantage of an unaware opponent and swipe them. The combat in this game is exciting and nothing feels cheap. Well, maybe the throws are a little bit irritating, but it's not terrible. I mean, sometimes you will get a little frustrated trying to beat a character, but once you figure out the things they do and finally take them down or push them out, it's incredibly satisfying. Not to mention there's also this weapon bar at the top that signifies your weapon health. If the bar runs out, you'll be disarmed. Well, I say that. Cervantes can still destroy me without his 2 overpowered mega swords. I think this style of combat is what really set this game apart from others at the time. Not that there's anything wrong with Tekken or Mortal Kombat, but Soul Blade was always the one that drew me back in. In addition, the arcade ladder offers both good and bad endings for each character. Interestingly, these alternate endings are based on interactive button presses. If you fail the button press, you get the bad ending, but if you do it right, then you get the good ending. Some of the endings are okay, I guess. The others, well, you've got stuff like this. Or even...
Sophitia, you have destroyed the evil soulage.
Oh, yeah, you're feeling alright, dude. You don't look so good. You've kind of got a serious case of sprite face. But yeah, these endings aren't hugely substantial. They're simple and not overly satisfactory, but they're a cute little way to end your arcade ladder. Although some of the bad endings don't actually feel that bad. In Sophitia's so-called bad ending, she's still having some cutesy birds come up to her. So maybe it's more appropriate to refer to them as endings A and B, with B being the better ending, I suppose. Come on! I think my favourite bad ending is Mitsurugi's bad ending. You actually have to beat a mini-game where you dodge bullets for this one, but it's so bizarrely sudden that I was completely caught off guard by it. And so Mitsurugi gets shot because...
Can't be sorry.
And then he laments that he can't beat a guy with a gun. Oh, bless. Oh yeah, and this is a thing, apparently. So, like I mentioned earlier, the final boss of the arcade ladder is the spirit of the Soul Edge itself, manifesting in the body of Cervantes. This boss can be really tricky, but it's actually just a souped up Cervantes. Although sometimes you can just push him off the edge and it's just like...
Out of the ring.
Oh. The best part is, though, that you can unlock Soul Edge if you beat the arcade mode as every character. And you know what? I didn't even know this as a kid. My poor child self had no idea what wonders awaited him if only he hadn't only played Cervantes. To be fair though, while I still like Cervantes the best, I found a couple of other characters I really enjoy playing as now as well. Seung Mina is incredibly good, and I actually got my best arcade time with her. Siegfried is also pretty good because his triangle attack is incredibly powerful and difficult to block. It outsmarted the computer many times. But arcade mode isn't the only mode in Soul Blade. Obviously you have your versus and practice modes, but there's something called Edge Master mode. Now from the title you probably don't know what this mode is, unless you played the game, in which case...
I'm sorry.
Now, Edge Master Mode sounds like a mode where you make offensive comments on the internet for the sake of being offensive, but it's actually a pretty unique mode for a fighting game, where you traverse the world and collect weapons off your opponents with different stats. The matches in this mode will sometimes have these little mutators as well, like sometimes you'll fight a foe who regenerates, sometimes you'll fight more than one enemy in a location, and sometimes you'll be poisoned. It's a really cool alternate mode, and it's quite baffling because it looks like it was actually programmed by one guy. So thanks Takashi, you really are an Edge Master. The weird thing about Edge Master is I never really played it when I was younger. I guess having Master in the title, it sounded a little hard. I mean, yeah, it really can be, but how did I never try this? You know, as a kid, I never really played this game to its full potential. But even as an adult now, when I've played everything and seen what the game has to offer, it really stands up. Soul Blade is one of those games that truly stood out to me on the PS1. I mean, there are a lot of games on the PS1 that I adore, but Soul Blade is definitely up there alongside games like Spyro and Crash. And for a PS1 game, Soul Blade still looks fantastic. The characters are vibrant and easily recognisable through silhouette and colour, and the stages even have dynamic time zones. You can be fighting at both day and night at the same arena, and it just looks awesome. The lighting is great too, and it's just such a graphically impressive game when you consider the fact that it's PS1. It managed to make people look like people, which is something the console didn't always manage to do very well. And the music, oh my lord, the music in this game is fast-paced, fun and memorable. And each tune perfectly fits their accompanying stage and character. For instance, Cervantes' theme is somber and piratey, but there's still a real emotional struggle in the song that indicates that there's still a good man in there somewhere. Everything feels suitably epic and amazing, and I think this game's fantastic. Maybe I'm biased, but I just love this game to death, and I think I always will. Now, you might be wondering what I think of the Soul Calibur games, and, well, I've never played them. I'll never shy away from the fact that I love point-and-click adventure games, and a while back you might remember that I reviewed a game called Simon the Sorcerer 3D, and at the end of that review, I teased a review for King's Quest VIII. And so here we are, 2 years later with 30,000 subscribers, so it's about time, isn't it? So let's dive right into it. Before we get into the game, we really need to cast our minds back to the gaming market of 1998. Games like Half-Life, Thief, Ocarina of Time, Spyro and Banjo-Kazooie all came out during that year. And so, some gaming sites even refer to 1998 as one of the best years for gaming ever. So, King's Quest VIII arrived at a weird time for adventure games. As in, adventure games were losing popularity fast in favour of more action-packed titles. And so, with this move to more action-oriented games, many adventure game companies had a choice. They could either evolve with the market or stick by their guns and hope for the best. And Sierra chose the former for the King's Quest series. Now, Grim Fandango was released in 1998, the same year as King's Quest VIII. Grim Fandango is considered a masterpiece these days by many people, myself included. But believe it or not, Grim Fandango actually sold very poorly on release. Yeah, apparently it only sold between 100,000 and 500,000 copies in 1998. Now compare that to King's Quest VIII. According to Roberta Williams, King's Quest VIII, despite its controversial move to a more action-oriented game, outsold Grim Fandango 2-1. She would go on to say that the adventure game as we all know and love it is a dead animal, except for those of us who love and revere them. Clearly, it wasn't actually worth it to put out point and clicks in the late 90s because who else was going to buy them except the hardcore fans? And with that in mind, we have to acknowledge that King's Quest VIII is not a traditional adventure game. Despite having some elements in place, we do have to expect something a bit different here. No matter how annoying it is for me to accept that this game is going to be different, I'm going to go in with an open mind, so let's do it. The game begins with a pre-rendered cutscene showing a king and his servant in their throne room. But something's off here, because this king is supposed to be King Graham.
We must begin construction immediately on a new silo.
Yeah, this guy. He is King Graham. I guess as he got older he became a generic king character with a posh voice who wears fine clothes. This is a sad far cry from the King Graham of the past, and this does not inspire me at all. Basically we've gone from...
You did? Well then, what happened?
To...
Ah, I see we are running a surplus in grain this year. Excellent.
What a sad display. The magic mirror, which to be fair is a staple of King's Quest lore, shows that there is a bad omen, which is actually just an exploding mask. So I guess there's our problem. So then we cut to a couple of unknowns having a conversation.
Good morning, Connor.
Oh, he's called Connor. That's a good name. I think it's a good one, but it's mine. I had it first, so stay off my turf, buddy. Then, a piece of the previously exploded mask falls from the sky with massive impact. Whew, I almost felt that. No! Really? Oh my god, I never realised it was possible to sound this posh while shouting no. It doesn't even sound genuine. It sounds like he's just been inconvenienced, like he lost his luggage at the airport or something.
Our deepest apologies, Mr. Connor, but it appears your luggage is nowhere to be found.
No! The basic plot of this game is everyone in Daventry, except our main character Connor, has turned to stone. And so, of course, we must embark on this quest to save everyone. So that's cool, right? Because this game, believe it or not, is a 3D action RPG. Yep, the debut of King's Quest in the third dimension after 4 years of silence. And this is what we're greeted with. How majestic. Just look at that draw distance. I'm at a loss. But this is what we have to do, so let's do it. So I immediately turn the corner and I come across her.
We beast it! Kill it! Kill it!
Whence came these foul creatures? This is madness.
Oh, okay. Connor is swole, man. That dude is hench. Murders big-ass monsters in a couple of punches. Wow. You see, you gotta be a beefcake to live in Daventry. Connor is taking after my main man Graham in King's Quest V here. Alexander, he was too weak to be a Daventry man. That's why he moved to the Green Isles. I mean, guys, Connor can punch monsters' heads off in a disturbingly gory fashion. He's like the King's Quest equivalent of Doom Guy. As far as the combat in this game goes, I mean, it's passable. It feels kind of clunky, but the best way I can describe it is kind of like Daggerfall mixed with Tomb Raider, and then there's also some, like, point and click elements mixed in with that.
like a hybrid.
So then I did some more exploring and I found out that Connor is a total drama queen. In case that wasn't obvious enough already.
I know not the evil which enslaves you, Sarah, but I vow its defeat and the deliverance of your sweet soul. Now you need me. I shall persevere until you are freed from this horrendous evil.
Oh, see? Drama queen.
Also, can we talk about this bloody Shakespearean English?
Whither does it fly?
Where the hell did this come from? I know characters had some quirky lines in previous King's Quest games, but they never spoke like this. This is so bizarrely inconsistent with the series. Like, maybe you could have one character talk like that and it'd be cute, but for everyone? No, that's just grating and pretentious. None of the monsters here are particularly difficult to kill. All you really need to do is keep hitting them until they crumple into a little pile on the ground. Or, in the case of the zombie things, make a ripping noise. Eventually, I came across a creature by a pond.
I am a magnificent unicorn.
You sure, buddy? You don't have the, you don't have the thing.
Indubitably.
You know, I find it hard to trust a creature who knows the word indubitably, so I'm leaving this thing alone. I think that's the smart thing to do. Basically, all I've done so far is run about and beat up monsters. I don't even have a weapon or any armor. I'm just a brick wall of a man smacking everything in my path. Is this King's Quest? Really? King's Quest was a series about wit and cunning, brains over brawn. They even made a point of Alexander being a weakling in King's Quest VI. That's why he had to use his smarts to win. So honestly, this combat goes against the core of what King's Quest is about. I mean, King's Quest VIII has this! This! In a King's Quest game! Blood vomit! In the same series as Archduke Fifi La Yip Yap! I soon found an axe embedded in the ceiling of this room, but I was then ambushed by an evil samurai knight guy.
Despicable varmint. Whence came he to Daventry?
Oh, shut up, dude. Nobody cares. Shut up. He actually nearly killed me, like I should be dead right now. But I'm too good for that. I can take on anything. Oh, okay. How often can you say that a farting monster comes out of an outhouse in your dark fantasy game and beats you up with a newspaper? Yes, I died here. I was murdered by a newspaper. The hero of Daventry, slain by a tabloid. What even? Like really, this game is so tonally confused. Like it tries to remind us we're still in this whimsical universe, but farting newspaper reading monsters do not gel with blood vomit. I don't think Sierra knew what they wanted this game to be, and it really shows. The humour is practically non-existent, and when it is there, it feels like the wrong style of humour. And so, I like to make my own humour.
I am sickened by your plight. I promise to do all I can to save you from further torment.
Hey, wanna see me do a sick backflip? Bruh. You know what? I'm fed up with this world. Oh no. After a while I found some armour, which ended up being pretty useful in the long run against fighting monsters.
'Tis beyond my reach.
That sounds really familiar.
I can't reach it.
Never again. You know, death in King's Quest VIII isn't fun. Now that might sound like a strange statement, but King's Quest always had fun deaths, as it were. I mean, even if this one bends genre, they could still have fun with the death scenes. But when you die in this game, you don't even get a sarcastic little message. It's just back to the main menu. That's it. Not even a game over screen. Come on, guys. I actually want to be berated for my failures. How dare you, Mask of Eternity? You can't even get that right. What else? Oh, how about Connor's extreme clumsiness in this game due to the awkward controls? Again, this seems kinda familiar. Do you ever have those dreams where you feel an ominous presence coming towards you and you just can't seem to get away from it? It's kind of what King's Quest VIII feels like. Going further into this game allowed me to grow accustomed to the controls, which honestly aren't too bad. They're certainly a little unorthodox and kinda awkward, but I wouldn't necessarily call them bad. The game uses the arrow keys and the mouse mostly, but you jump with the insert key. It's a strange choice I think, especially with WASD in space being the norm at this point, but it works I guess. After a while, we find our way into Castle Daventry, a location which has appeared in so many King's Quest games. and it looks largely accurate actually. It's a pretty nice interpretation. And these portraits, oh my, those are portraits from King's Quest VI. Yeah, okay, that wins you a couple of points. As the fourth comment I ever received would say, that puts a wangus on my pangus. It turns out though that the painting of Graham actually has a key hidden inside of it. Looks like all those years of inventory puzzles finally got to him, eh? So does that mean that Graham actually planned for this eventuality? Does that mean that Graham placed that key there knowing that one day it might be necessary to save the kingdom? And considering the key leads to a teleporter to key areas of the game, that would mean that he planned for this specific eventuality, that this samurai dude would take over. That would mean that Graham would be the unsung hero of this story. So you know what that means? That means that Graham is actually Ness from Earthbound. But hey, that's just a theory. A Graham theory. I waited years to make that joke and it was worth it. After this, I met a half-frozen wizard and I needed his help to reach the Dimension of Death. Honestly though, this half-stone wizard just looks like he's giving directions. Dude, utility in dire circumstances? That's pretty awesome. Hey wizard guy, can you like point me to the church at all? I'm kinda lost. Bye. So useful. Also a ghost bear? Just wanted to point out Ghost Bear, because he ain't around for long. You know, I find it kind of funny that we're entering a place called the Dimension of Death, because King's Quest has loads of dark underworld type areas in its lore, and here we just have another one.
There is but one gate to life, but the entrances to death are many.
Oh, right. Okay, I don't care. So, the Dimension of Death is basically like a giant Egyptian tomb. So at least that sets it apart and gives it its own identity in the King's Quest universe. Although, the fact that it's a tomb again really reminds me of Simon 3D. You know, I'm actually starting to think that Simon the Sorcerer 3D was just a direct parody of King's Quest 8. There's a significant amount of similar things here and it's really eerie actually. Now that I'm used to the combat, it's not bad at all. Although to be honest, it's way too easy. I'm playing this game on normal and I haven't died since early in the game when I didn't have any armor. Anyway, considering we're in the Dimension of Death, here, Connor fights skeletons. Oh wow, skeleton enemies? In a fantasy game? You've broken new ground here guys, that's never been done before. What I really loved about earlier King's Quest was the fact that it wasn't generic fantasy. It was fairy tale fantasy, which made it stand out a lot more. It had its own cute universe that referenced classic fairy tales and tropes along those lines. That was King's Quest's own identity. King's Quest was a series of whimsical adventures full of fantastic sights, zany creatures and ridiculous characters. Here we have none of that. I don't want to fight bloody Smork over here. That's lame. Honestly, just give me Cedric. Cedric over Smork any day. King's Quest 8 throws the classic King's Quest feel out of the window in favour of a generic medieval fantasy story. You know, I could forgive the genre change in this game if it still felt like it was part of the same universe, but that's the problem. It never feels at home in the series at all. Like, there's the occasional nod to older games.
Sounds!
Which is nice, but ultimately we have a story about a brave lowly hero who saves the kingdom from an evil curse. Now where else have we heard that except everywhere? Anyway, the Dimension of Death is basically a giant labyrinth. I mean, you guys got that part down. If I ever made a top 10 adventure game tropes list, labyrinths would at least be in the top 3. There's a bit more of a lean towards some puzzle solving here, and that's some classic King's Quest stuff right there. I actually even wrote some stuff down for the puzzles here, and I gotta admit, that made me smile a little bit. The small amount of puzzles that are here feel like they could easily fit into another King's Quest game, so this is a huge positive I can say about this one. But the puzzles unfortunately take a back seat here, because now we've got an easy but clunky combat system in the driver's seat. It's kinda depressing. In other news, in this Dimension of Death, we also run across a character called Azrael, and I'm pretty sure this guy escaped from a metal band's album cover. What a badass looking guy. And believe it or not, despite basically governing this army of disgruntled skeletons, he's actually a pretty chill guy who wants nothing more than to help you. And I know what some of you may be thinking with this character called Azrael being here, and there's also some skeletons, and all I'm gonna say about that is... You know what? I want to goof off some more.
Hail, fair lady. May I slake my thirst at your well?
Oh, shaky.
I pray thee, partake of my rejuvenating water. Bring me some rust and mold.
Oh man, I hate it when girls ask for rust and mold. I mean, I'm not made of oxidization. Well, technically, I guess, maybe. What's that? A young maiden yonder requires my help? Worry not, child, I'll come to help you.
A moment later, he rushed out and ran into the mausoleum. He didn't see me, so I ran in behind him. I saw him slip through a magical door, and I followed.
Wait, you wandered into the dimension of death? Really? What the hell were you thinking?
Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind?
By the way, kid, you got off easy. Your parents are dead. Well, made of stone, but I'm not completing this game, so they're just gonna stay that way. Even if this game doesn't click with me at all, after playing it a bit more, I totally get why some people love this game. Because, you know, there are actually people online who have serious nostalgia for this game and consider it an underrated gem. This game came out at a time when adventure games needed to deviate, and King's Quest VIII did its best in order to fit into that market. You can't blame Sierra for a huge leap which didn't quite work. You can see the love and care that was put into this game, but it ends up being a confused mess and a boring, generic fantasy game. While this game may lead many hardcore adventure game fans to dismay, it has a small amount of charm that some people may enjoy, but that's as far as I can praise it. Basically, King's Quest VIII is the Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts of the series. As in, it's not necessarily a bad game, but it deviates so much that it just feels off. Oh, and some people like that game too, so it's similar in that regard. But do I hate King's Quest VIII? Not really. It's not a bad game, but it's a bad King's Quest game. It doesn't properly fit into the universe in my opinion, and that's why I can't really enjoy it. Overall, this is a strange chapter in King's Quest's history. I mean, it's a game that tried to fit into the market at the time, and succeeded, at the cost of being vilified by quite a few adventure game fans. It's easy to see why someone might hate this game, but it's also easy to see why someone might have nostalgia for it. So basically, it's kind of like Marmite that's dependent on nostalgia. That is a terrible analogy to end this video with. Bootlegs are an interesting subject. You see them posted on the internet all the time, often mishmashing a myriad of different franchises into one weird combination. Some of my favourite bootlegs are the toys. Oh boy, they are just a joy to look at. So first off, there's just some weird stuff like E.T. goes pumping iron. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory, you know? I love the stance, it's majestic. What a sight to see. And then you have funny Dino and Martin, and hey, you okay there, Martin? Looks like the mushrooms in this universe are a little more than just power-ups. Then you have things like Star Warriors. Is that what you're going with? You know, Star Warriors has a better flaw, but who am I to judge? But oh my, that beard. Is this a Lionel Richie and Yoda hybrid? I mean, I can dig it. Oh man, this figure range has Door Ladder too? Man, he's my favourite. Oh, and galaxies are far, far away. They sure are. Man, these toys are so educational. I gotta see more. And we're done. Where I'm going with this is that there are a slew of bootleg movies out there, usually based on acclaimed movies for kids. Whenever a modern classic children's film is created, a monster is created in its shadow. The bootleg kids movie. Usually they entail the title of the actual film somehow, but it's presented in a way that just about gets them off the copyright hook. Not that that really matters these days. But today we're scraping the bottom of the bootleg barrel when we review the masterpiece that is Ratatoing. Ratatoing is a movie, I think? It's a 40-minute long Brazilian animation from 2007, the same year as its actually good counterpart, Ratatouille. According to Wikipedia, which doesn't give the movie a full page by the way, the 44-minute long film tells the story of Marcel Toing, a mouse, not even a rat, who is the most gifted chef in Rio de Janeiro. He owns the famed restaurant Ratatoing along with his crew, consisting of fellow mice Carol and Greg. They plan out weekly raids on human kitchens to acquire fresh ingredients for use in their dishes. I mean, that's not the worst idea for a plot, so could it really be that bad? So the film begins with a shot showing Rio de Janeiro, and I gotta be honest, something looks really off about this skyline. Maybe it's the fact that the whole scene looks like a series of compressed image files trying to create the illusion of 3D. Well, okay, and this street isn't too bad looking, I guess. Kinda reminiscent of Telltale 7 Max, honestly.
Just to taste the famous recipes served there at Ratatoing.
You know, I can't really get over the name. I don't even have a joke about it, it's just awful. And also, this narrator, he is basically just pure exposition. That's how you know we're in for an amazing 40 minutes.
Chef Marcel Tong prepares the most delicious and exotic dishes, always using special secret ingredients.
Not really that secret, is it? I mean, I can see the worms, Marcel. You ain't fooling me. But wait, didn't the film's plot say that they raid food from human kitchens? What the hell is this? Worms and peas? I mean, more power to the guy if he makes that work, but you've stolen all this human food already. Why include the worms, bro? Oh, and there are flies too, apparently. Because gross out humor is gourmet. Oh god, is this what the rats look like? Look at their mouth animations, they're so twitchy and gross. I mean, I wasn't expecting quality, but it looks like, you know, bad. There are animations from amateur YouTubers with a higher standard than this. Not that there's anything wrong with YouTube animators, of course, but they do better than this without a budget. I mean, what the hell? They have vacant, terrifying, black, beady eyes. And the female rats have... they have rat boobs. I can't even make this up. How could you do that? How could you do that to rats? To animated rats? And you know what? This lady sounds like Moira Brown from Fallout 3, and that makes me really uncomfortable.
There's no doubt about that here. Their food is always guaranteed to be delicious.
So what we have here is a scene where rats are basically just complimenting everything at the restaurant.
It's divine, don't you agree, Oscar?
Yes, Maria Liche, just divine.
Because this is something we needed to see. It's such a weird scene. I mean, the mouth animations are already uncomfortable, but honestly, I'm not sure what kind of scene is supposed to be set here. Our hero, and I'm assuming Marcel is supposed to be the hero character, is already successful, so it's not like he's a down-on-his-luck character rising to the top. We're basically starting out with no struggle or anything, just some rats who talk too much about how good Marcel is.
Huh? What the heck is this?
Calm down, there are kids watching this. Do you want to show that level of aggression?
I ordered the flies with gorgonzola sauce, and this is definitely camembert sauce.
Is that really the problem there?
But this definitely is gorgonzola, sir. It is not camembert.
Oh, you're right. I somehow confused them. I'm so terribly sorry.
So what was the point of that dialogue exactly? What did we get out of it? Nothing. It's absolutely worthless. So then the pink rat does a sassy walk into the kitchen. Also, why are you pink? Are you sick? You know, I'm just genuinely concerned here that that rat may have been poisoned. As a matter of fact, the main trio of characters are easily identified by the colour of their fur. It's kind of like, you know, like an anime where you see a character with some wacky off-colour hair and you're like, oh, I wonder who the protagonist is.
Do you know that the party at table 4 has changed his order again? Now he wants
Let me guess. He wants the spicy, fatty, and crisp spaghetti.
Precisely!
You know, that green guy's voice is really familiar and I just can't seem to... Oh my god, it's Eggman. Like, actually, it's Eggman from Sonic. And Marcel is voiced by Michelangelo from the 2003 Ninja Turtles. You know, this movie has my childhood up against a firing squad and I'm gonna tell them to pull the trigger.
I'm glad you know the ordering habits of your clientele.
Please don't do that again. Also, you might notice that Greg over here, and yes, his name is Greg, says precisely a lot.
Precisely! Precisely! Precisely!
Yeah, I think that's an attempt at a catchphrase, but it's not funny. It's just not funny at all. Wow. Did this script actually make it past the first draft? Because this is rock bottom dialogue. And this restaurant scene just drags on with completely insubstantial and downright weird dialogue.
Let the boy have what he wants.
Yes, Daddy, I love cheddar.
My dear, when exactly did you travel to Europe?
Please, just move on. Give us plot, give us adventure, give us anything.
It was my second cousin Vinny who told me about this great restaurant. Whenever he travels to the city on business, he always eats at the Ratatoing.
Oh my god, these guys just say what's on their mind, don't they? It's like a YouTube comment section up in here. So then, due to popular demand, Marcel comes out to meet his customers. And they're incredibly adamant about knowing this so-called secret ingredient.
The actual secret ingredient that can be found in all of the food prepared here is lots of...
Come on, out with it!
Lots and lots and lots of...
If I know my cliche script writing, he's about to cop out right now.
The dishes are prepared with the secret ingredient of a lot of dedication and care.
There you go. Also, I hate your eyebrows. They look like duck feet. Die in a fire. From here, this table of 4 angry rats ask once again for the secret ingredient, but Marcel doesn't tell them. This sets up the four rats as our main villains because they too own a restaurant that was basically run out of business by Marcel. And to be honest, as far as villain motivations go, this is completely reasonable.
All they're doing is trying to compete. They just want to be on the map. It's perfectly illogical and not at all villainous.
Our diabolical plan is masterful. We plan to be able to compete against a successful restaurant. Well, now that the restaurant is closed, let's look at what the heroes are up to.
Come on, Greg, it's time.
Huh. Yeah, this scene just turns up. Out of nowhere. What? Why? They're gearing up for some kind of mission, but what is this? They make grunts when they put things on, and it's incredibly uncomfortable to watch. Ooh. Why is this a thing? Why are they running in different directions? Why are they in a white room? Is this the Matrix? What plane of existence is this? And we just end up with this shot. Why?
These questions will never be answered.
I mean, it's one thing to have animation as bad as this, but damn, you could have at least had a good script.
We're about a third of the way through the movie and, like, nothing has happened. At all.
Like, oh, okay, maybe it's a kid's movie, maybe I'm not the target audience, but Ratatouille is a great movie that can be enjoyed by more than one demographic. But would a kid even enjoy this? Not only has nothing happened, but there's been nothing eye-catching. No action scenes, no slapstick humour, nothing. You don't start a kids movie with a long dry spell of boring dialogue. It's basic script writing. What the hell were they even going for here? Honestly, it doesn't take a genius to write a semi-decent script for a movie of this caliber. Especially when you're riding off the coattails of something already really popular. Not even Food Fight messed its script up this badly. I can't believe I'm actually defending Food Fight here. This is what Ratatoing has reduced me to. I mean, you know, Ratatoing does seem to be a smaller project, but that does not excuse this.
Greg, have you forgotten that it's Thursday night?
Oh, I forgot we do something special on Thursday night.
Every character speaks in exposition. It's ridiculous.
From here, the rat trio enters the human kitchen, and this is where they steal all their food from. Oh, and also this villain lady rat follows them because the waiter forgot to lock the door. Seriously, great plot point, guys. Very, very believable. It's like a Deus Ex Machina for the bad guys. I mean, what? Oh, never mind. The waiter had a bow tie on his finger.
I can see why he'd be distracted.
Can I also mention that I'm not even covering this fully in order? I'm covering it in the most logical chronology I can come up with because this film has such a messy script that they show the waiter scene after the villain rat walks right in.
You know, it's kind of like Pulp Fiction, except they didn't intend to mix up the chronology, and it's just bad, and it has rats in it.
And then through a hilarious turn of events, Greg accidentally turns on the ceiling fan and Marcel gets swung around. And then, so does Greg, because we need our hilarious incompetent side character, don't we? And then the female character doesn't know how to turn off the fan and mishears Greg.
They pushed the button behind you!
Did you say pull?
How? Hilarious. Anyway, the bad lady rat catches them and figures out that they get their fresh ingredients from the humans. And because of Greg's hilarious shenanigans, this time they only get a single strawberry.
We were able to bring back an excellent strawberry.
We're at the halfway point here, and the only thing we've established so far is that Marcel has a monopoly in the rat food business because of his immoral addiction to stealing from humans who could potentially invest in rat death machines, which affects not only Marcel and his incompetent cronies, but also the entire rat populace of that area. And that includes the elderly and the children. Marcel isn't a hero, he's a fat rat capitalist driven by pure greed. He has no regard for those around him, and the only thing that matters is profits, and not even his own life is valuable. From here, the four villains discuss the juicy info that the nosy rat found, and from there they hatch a vile scheme to keep themselves in business. Also, that floor has a really low-res texture file. I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, guys, when I say now, we put our great plan in motion.
Well, this ought to be good. I mean, I wonder what they have in store.
1, 2, 3, now!
should have known.
Why? Please tell me why and how. What is this plan? Dancing? Clearly the scene shows them scaring humans, so what's the relevance of the can-can?
This film is like the movie equivalent of acid reflux. That's how it makes me feel.
Oh well, their shenanigans cause the humans to put down a load of mousetraps, and I mean a lot of mousetraps. So the next time our so-called heroes do their gear up sequence...
And yes, it does happen a second time.
They see a lot of traps. Like, wow.
Oh dear.
Except it doesn't, because Marcel finds something worth taking. A whole bar of chocolate. Without wrapping. Just on the counter. Exposed. In a South American climate.
You know, I would say it's a trap, but I don't think the movie's smart enough to have that plot point.
Oh, that's great! We've never had any chocolate before.
Now that's not quite true, is it?
2 chocolate ice cream with biscuit bran.
The chemicals are finally getting to her brain. God bless her soul, she probably only has a couple weeks left. Oh, hello there. Oh, God. Well, now.
Can't talk now.
Oh, is that how cats work? No, it isn't.
Is that a cat or an angry goblin? Look at him wobbling around on those little stumpy legs. I feel like he's about to give me a side quest in an MMO. Why is this actually a thing? Marcel and the Rat Brigade are forced to escape, and the Ratatoing restaurant suffers because they don't have ingredients. So this is the problem that needs to be solved. Finally, we have an actual plot.
And we're like 75% of the way through the movie. I hate it.
Realising that the only way forward is to get that food, they gear up once more.
And yes, it does happen a third time. I want to die.
This time, Marcel goads the cat into chasing him while Greg and the other one get some cheese. But surprise, surprise, we then have the arrival of 2 of the bad rats. And they hold up the 2 good rats with cocktail sticks.
Those are some very dangerous weapons. I mean, I have some in my house, but they're an illegal import.
But why? Don't you think there's enough cheese here for all of us? Go get your own, but watch out for the traps.
You ever heard of punctuation? I hear it's pretty good these days.
Hey, look behind you guys! It's a monster!
You must really think we're idiots. First you think we don't know about the rat traps, and now you give us the old behind you bit.
I'm losing my patience with you. Hand over those bags of yours.
That's it, my big friend. Grab these 2 and take them to your boss and see how proud he is of you.
Okay, what happened to the conflict between the cat and Marcel? Did something happen there?
How did you get him to want to cooperate with you? He's your natural enemy.
Well, I had a homemade snack in my bag. I offered it to him, he loved it, and he wanted more.
Oh, never mind. Apparently Marcel trained the cat with his food? Okay. It's not like this movie could have been saved anyway. It might as well end with a cop-out. So, the problem is solved literally minutes after it was created. The cat gives the villain rat to the humans, and the restaurant can thrive once more.
And soon the Ratatoing was full again. Almost everything seemed to be back to normal. I said almost everything, didn't I?
So what actually did happen to those 2 villain rats, and what about their wives?
I heard those rats of ours were sent to an out-of-town laboratory. Oh,
Sent to a lab? Well, that's dark. The moral is, don't stick it to the man. Because the man always wins.
Ratatoing is a movie that can join the exalted league of awful we've come to adore. It's terribly scripted and dreadfully animated, and the story is so insubstantial and full of pointless, dumb moments that it actually hurts. The humour is completely flat, it's a total mess, and the script feels like the first attempt. You know, I don't even think it's a far cry to say this might just be the worst animated movie ever made. Because there isn't a single thing about it that's redeemable.
You know, I don't really know how to end this. I mean, we all knew it was going to be a bad movie. But maybe it was an outlier, an anomaly in their work. We all make mistakes. Maybe I should give them another shot. I mean, would it kill me to watch another one of their works?
The magic's in the ball.
Yep, it'll kill me.
Spooky!
Space, the final frontier. You know, we don't exactly go up there often, so who knows what kind of stuff we're gonna see in the future? Who knows what kind of stuff is up there? We're talking like space aliens or something, or maybe that one planet that's backwards. You know, maybe we can find that one. Or maybe we'll even find George Clooney. I mean, that's what happened in Gravity with Sandra Bullock. He just went off into space. I don't even think that was scripted. I reckon he's still out there. And I love space so much. I wish I could just go on a quest to space.
I'm doing a space quest. It's hard to believe that even though I love point and clicks, I've never actually covered a Space Quest game on this channel. So I thought, hey, let's cover the last Space Quest. Space Quest 6. The Spinal Frontier. Yeah, they went there.
Space Quest is a comedic sci-fi series that began in 1986 with the Saurian encounter, and overall 6 Space Quest games were made, each of them having their own unique feel. Space Quest 6 was released in 1995 and isn't really considered to be the best in the series. This game uses animations in the vein of King's Quest 7 and Torrens Passage, as opposed to the sprites used in Space Quest 4 and 5.
See, I haven't actually played much of Space Quest 6, so I don't actually know how good it is. Is it an underrated gem, or is it a disappointing end to the series? Let's find out.
So we begin at some kind of court-martial for Roger Wilco, the protagonist, after the events of Space Quest 5, where, I guess he kinda did something heroic. For shame, Roger.
Do you have anything to say for yourself before we pronounce sentence?
Can't you guys take a joke?
Do you have anything intelligent to say for yourself before we pronounce sentence?
They strip him down completely for some reason and reduce him to the rank of janitor. And if you're a Space Quest fan, you know that's how he started out in the first place. And then there's a shot of his underwear changing into this spaceship. It's masterful cinematography. Then Commander Kielbasa, whose name is a clear play on the Kilrathi from the Wing Commander series, thanks everyone on board for their recent successes.
So, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, 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 thank you.
And yeah, he's meant to sound like Picard. There is a lot of Star Trek in this, basically. Also, not sure if this guy is an alien, but his neck is nearly doing a full 180 here.
A full-on Exorcist twist, if you catch my drift.
And because everybody has done such a good job, Kielbasa awards them with some shore leave on Polysorbate 60, aka generic sci-fi planet name. Next you'll be telling me there's a planet called Delta Berxilon 5 or something.
Delta Berxilon 5.
Oh. And we are also introduced to our main villain here, Sharpay. And she, she's voiced by the same actress who does Valanice in King's Quest 7.
I believe you'll find him here, on Polysorbate 60. I'm getting awfully tired of this, so long as his body is intact.
Hey up, love.
As Roger gets beamed down at the planet, he gets embedded in the floor because it's Roger Wilco. This kind of stuff just happens to him. And not a single person or thing here is like, oh my god, that person's stuck in the floor. They just don't care. But should they? It's not their problem. Is a robot not entitled to stroll? Apparently not, because the robots are actually our way out of here. That was just rude, Roger. And from here we explore Polysorbate 60, which is basically only a few screens. There's an arcade, a bar, an inn, and a couple of shops, including this guy.
Ugh, okay, I'm going.
So we enter the arcade and we meet this guy who is grinding his teeth really hard. His name is Jerkwad and he challenges you to a game of Stooge Fighter, and you can't beat him right now, so there's no point trying. And if you're wondering, yes, it is a Three Stooges Street Fighter hybrid.
Because of course it is.
So what else is there to do here? There's no real aim, so you kind of just have to walk around and wait for things to happen. A photo booth turns up at one point, and with the one Bookazoid we have, we can get a photo of Roger, which fits perfectly over the ID we get from a bicycle. Also, this photo booth kinda eats this guy, and yep, that definitely taps into a childhood fear of mine. Anyway, we'll need that ID later, but first we need to find a guy in a trench coat who is apparently looking for an ender droid who is hanging out in the basement of a bar. Well, it shouldn't be too difficult to take him down, right? We did kick down the door after all, so we're probably a bad enough dude to take this guy on.
You go now, and I don't rearrange your organs.
Oh yeah, tough guy. Oh no. It was just a prank, bro.
Yeah, that's a great improvement. Look much better now.
Oh yeah, there are deaths in this game, of course. Many wacky, weird, disturbing deaths. Although, to be honest, nothing is ever as disturbing as the Space Quest 3 deaths.
Nothing like a good comedy game to lighten the mood, eh?
Although much like King's Quest 7 and Dragon's Fear, the deaths in Space Quest 6 are completely meaningless because of the ability to instantly try again. So basically it reduces the death scenes to nothing more than a bit of fun. You're actually allowed to be careless now, and I'm not sure if I like that. So this guy is a Terminator. I mean, there's no two ways about it. I mean, just listen to the accent.
Yeah, that's a great improvement. Look much better now.
But our friend implies that he's liquid, much like the T-1000 in Terminator 2. And if we cast our minds back, what was one of the ways in which Robert Patrick was stopped in his tracks?
Hasta la vista, baby.
Ah yes, freezing him. And luckily some guys in the upstairs of the bar are basically inhaling what I think is nitrogen. Perfect. We scare them up with our fake security card and then we hook up the nitrogen to a nearby pipe. Oh, and there's also some tubing here that we need. So then we distract the bartender by asking him to make a complicated drink, and after this you can break off a pipe that leads to the basement and the tubing can link up these two areas. So then, once we turn on the nitrogen, we can head back down and fake Arnie over here is frozen solid. So then we can smash him into little ice cubes, like exact cubes for some reason, put him in an ice tray and deliver him to the trenchcoat guy for the reward of 50 whole Buckazoids. And, as it happens, we need those Buckazoids to buy alcohol for a drunk guy who then gives us a cheat sheet for Stooge Fighter 3.
You see, it all comes full circle. I mean, all you have to do to be good at video games is apprehend a killer android. Easy.
The entire puzzle here hinges on your knowledge of popular culture though. If you don't work out that the android is like the T-1000 from Terminator 2, you might not connect him to the nitrogen. While it's cool, I don't necessarily think it constitutes good puzzle design. And the pop culture references here are a little bit more prominent than before, I think.
It's one of those Bjorn guys. It's so cute when they talk about assimilating everyone.
Don't get me wrong, pop culture references aren't bad. I mean, I use them a lot, but they can't be your only avenue for humour. All the Space Quest games had moments that were funny in their own right, but this one definitely feels more flat to me. It's not the worst adventure game I've ever played, but it pales in comparison to its predecessors. You see, this game was designed by Josh Mandel as opposed to Mark Crow and Scott Murphy, even though Scott Murphy was involved at one point. And the difference in style is completely palpable here. No hard feelings to Josh Mandel, of course. I mean, he was the voice of King Graham in King's Quest 5. But the two guys from Andromeda or even Dynamics make a better Space Quest in my opinion. Anyway, we return to the arcade and give Jerkwad a rematch. And with our cheats, we win. We basically get given a secret attack that is incredibly OP and we destroy. I'm not sure what the attack is supposed to be, but whatever.
How lucky can a guy get? That was pure luck. Jeez.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't hear you over all that salt.
This guy acts like your average Counter-Strike tryhard. You could probably use his voice lines in CSGO and it'd be virtually indistinguishable from the average player.
That was pure luck. Jeez.
So because of a bet, we win 300 Buckazoids from Jerkwad and we then use that to fund a room at the local inn. And well, this guy's the best.
Anyway, enjoy your stay. If you need anything, don't hesitate to tell someone.
This guy's my spirit animal.
However, on the way to Roger's room, a couple of big guys capture Roger because I think they work for the main villain. Although I didn't necessarily realise this at first and I thought they were just being racist or something. So they handcuff you, which doesn't really last long, and... pelvis? Really? We're going down that route? Okay. The first guy isn't really difficult to take down. I mean, I couldn't actually find any way to alert him, so there's barely any danger here. And the guy in the next room doesn't care either.
Well, well, well. The worm is out of the hole. So...
he's completely unconcerned for no reason. I don't get it. But then we give him this so-called burlesque chip for his head computer, and this happens.
Thinking it was the churlish Muddy, he pops it in place.
I would rather have had a violent death scene here, but not even that's an escape now.
And you need to fix up this remote, and you can only do that with the manual that the game comes with, because they didn't have time to put the actual solution in the game. This isn't the only time there's a puzzle like this, by the way. After sending out a distress signal, you're rescued by Stella Santiago, who is meant to be a Klingon, I guess. Although she ends up just looking stressed all the time.
I protest. I am not a merry man.
Also, she's supposed to be like a love interest of sorts for Roger, but technically Roger already had a love interest and a son from the future with someone else. This is kind of awkward. So here we are on the deep ship 86, and we do some lab stuff with an incredibly gross grooming kit we took from the goon from earlier, and I can't look at it.
Listen, I've played a lot of point and clicks, but that is the most disgusting adventure game item I've ever seen.
While on the ship, you get an assignment directly from Kielbasa, where Roger has to clean up some old lady's room. But actually, this old lady is the villain, and she tried to have Roger murdered with gas. Luckily, Stella once again steps in to save Roger, but unfortunately, she can't save herself.
Stella!
Ha! So then we attend a funeral in a Space Quest game. I can't believe it. It's the Cemetery Watchman from Gabriel Knight. Yeah, I love that game. Okay, yeah, so Roger is sad. It's a weird tonal shift, but then it isn't because Stella isn't dead, and Roger gets a message from her.
Roger, help me. I only have a moment. They faked.
Stellar, what happened? The picture's gone. You're alive?
Roger tries his best to tell Kielbasa, who, well, I mean, he's got other things in his mind. So it's up to Roger to save Stella, and this is the plot for the rest of the game. And if the Star Confederation isn't with me,
then you're my enemy.
You know, I honestly feel like the puzzles get quite obscure from here. You need to learn a Vulcan death crypt because, well, hey, wacky references, am I right? And apparently they have to say dialogue from Tango and Cash while they do it? What?
Oh, Tango san, maybe you can fetch me up with your sister. I have told her after her and like, oh, we're gonna have margaritas together. Oh, let's hope let's get we have fun. Oh, get a hubba hubba.
I mean, our main goal here is to get past these two guards who are guarding the ship bay, and the death grip thing is useful for taking down the smaller guard.
Ooh, boy, I got you with my fingers in your Kurt Russell. Now you can't get away. I got you now that you've got it. Hard to believe this is a real job. Oh.
But the bigger guy isn't so easy to get past, and he puts you in the brig. And to escape the brig, you turn this buffet of fruit into a human-shaped thing, which tricks the guard somehow? I honestly thought I'd have to create the shape and hide it under the bed sheets. But no, this fruit Roger is perfectly acceptable. You can just sit here and that's the solution. And we can then escape using the fruit trolley, and then we can just go anywhere. And nobody cares. There aren't any consequences for what we did. We escaped the brig. We escaped the brig. The only other thing in there is a flesh-eating monster. Surely other people must have heard that Roger was in there for attacking other members of the crew. Even the guy who you knocked out can see him and not care about it. This is incredibly nonsensical design here. They're not concerned that the guy that attacked them out of nowhere is free. So basically, to get past both of them at once, you use a drugged donut to knock out the big guy, and I mean, this happens for some reason. And then we can easily do the death grip a second time on the smaller guard. I mean, does he even care? Does he just want to accept this? You know, the first attempt at this should have resulted in a death. The whole brig area is just unnecessary padding with bad puzzles. Now we have the challenge of getting through the door. Both buttons need to be pressed at the same time, but Roger doesn't have long enough arms. Or any friends. So then we borrow an arm off an android, and he just gives it up. He doesn't ask for any favours, he's just like, hey, sure, just give it back, okay?
Poor guy doesn't know he's in an adventure game.
And we also take one of his eyes to use a retinal scanner on a shuttle. Is everybody here painfully stupid? It seems like the only person with half a brain is Roger, but they tried to paint Roger as the stupid one. You know, I'm starting to think he's just a scapegoat. And after that, there's a complicated process to start a ship, which, I mean, that's some classic Space Quest, honestly. It's got its own little charm. Roger escapes with the help of the hologram manual override. And no, it's not Manuel, because that would have made the joke actually a little bit funnier.
Don't apologize to me. It's the players you ruined it for.
Ha!
If it's not immediately obvious, I'm not really retaining much interest in this space quest. It has some fun moments, and the late great Gary Owen shines as the narrator.
Wow, the static energy you built up discharged, frying Lard Boy's circuitry. Did you actually think of that, or was it just luck?
But ultimately, I can see why this is often considered the lesser of the Space Quest games. The humour relies too heavily on references and crass jokes rather than having the sharp weight of previous titles, the puzzles are a little too obscure here to be fun in my opinion, and I don't care enough about the plot to continue. After Space Quest 5, which is my personal favourite of the series, I really consider this one to be a bit of a letdown. No ill will to Josh Mandel of course, I just didn't enjoy this game as much as the others. It is graphically nice and I love the interface, and I really love the personality that Roger's walk cycle has in this one. So in terms of presentation it's good, but in a lot of the other departments, for me, it falls short.
But I do wonder, how does this game end?
I must say, Roger, there's not a man in the universe who knows me inside the way you do.
The last time I covered a LucasArts adventure game on this channel was over 3 years ago in the Loom video.
Loom!
Asking me about Loom.
Bugger off! It was a strange video, but it was the early days of my channel, so that's kind of to be expected. And since then I haven't actually covered any other LucasArts games, so it's probably about time that I did. So how about the newly remastered Day of the Tentacle? Just to ignore the Sam and Max there.
After all these years, LucasArts' classic adventure has finally been re-released. The idea of remaking Day of the Tentacle has been tossed around for years now. According to Kotaku, a remaster was 80% finished back in 2012 before LucasArts was dissolved by Disney in the huge buyout. But with the remaster of Grim Fandango from Double Fine, a partnership had already been established, and so Tim Schafer has snagged Day of the Tentacle as well, another game that he worked on back in the day.
And considering I was given a review copy of this game, I thought I might as well take a look.
Day of the Tentacle is the 1993 sequel to Maniac Mansion, a game well known for its violence against hamsters. However, Day of the Tentacle is much more widely acclaimed than its predecessor, to the point where not everyone will realise that it's actually a sequel. The game very much stands alone.
Day of the Tentacle is touted as one of the best adventure games of all time, and yeah, it pretty much is, and I'm going to get into why right now.
Day of the Tentacle follows three protagonists, Bernard, Hoagie and Laverne, three very strange people, all with a surprising amount of depth to them. Essentially, you explore the Maniac Mansion in three time periods, past, present and future, and you try to put a stop to a future where hyper-intelligent human-hating tentacles rule the world with an iron fist. The progenitor of this crisis is the aptly named Purple Tentacle, known to be a little antagonistic from the last game, especially in comparison to the much more docile Green Tentacle.
Yeah! Good luck in saving the world, B-Man!
In the intro of this game, Purple drinks some sludge from a pipe, and as a result becomes
smarter, more aggressive.
And then comes this classic line, with the bold claim that he could
take on the world.
And realistically, he can do just that. So it's up to our three very odd heroes to take him down a notch, along with the help of mad scientist Dr. Fred.
To the time machine!
So let's talk about our three protagonists here. Bernard Bernoulli is your average geek and the only returning protagonist from the previous game.
I miss Razor.
Bernard kind of plays the straight man of the trio, but he's definitely a charming character in his own right.
Sure, lay one of those Havanan babies on me.
Hoagie is a rather wide metalhead, and he's also a bit of a slob. Lovely.
He's kind of like if you took Ted from Bill and Ted and just kind of squashed him down a little bit and made him a bit wider. That's pretty much who Hoagie is.
He's also one of the funniest characters in the game, if you ask me.
My friend Eddie told me the pyramids are built by aliens. Way.
And lastly, we have Laverne, a wacky-looking girl who is unlike any other female protagonist I've ever seen. She has this voice like she's constantly spacing out, and this crazy glint in her eyes. Also, she carries around a scalpel.
Are you gonna use your scalpel?
No, of course not.
Darn. Do you want to use mine?
No.
Yeah, she's a little freaky. So these three heroes are forced to use the Chronogon, a set of time-travelling porta-potties, to go back to the past and stop Purple from drinking the sludge. And it fails, because Dr. Fred uses a knockoff diamond as a power source. So Hoagie is sent 200 years into the past, and Laverne is sent 200 years into the future, while Bernard stays in the present. So the overall goal is to return Hoagie and Laverne to the present, get a diamond, and defeat Purple Tentacle and his diabolical schemes. I find it really interesting how this game basically takes place in one location, but in 3 time zones, so it never feels very cramped. Each time zone is visually distinct from the other. The past uses a lot of dull browns and greens, the present is more vibrant with oranges and blues, and
everything is chrome in the future!
The art style of this game is also fantastic. Everything has this askew, exaggerated feel to it, and it translates incredibly well into the remastered graphics. Even the characters have these weird proportions and walk cycles which reflect their personality traits. Bernard has this goofy, nerdy walk, Hoagie kinda shuffles with his hands in his pockets, and Laverne kinda just dances along madly. It's really rad design. I mean, every single character is unique, even if they're intended to look similar to their ancestors. It makes each and every person in this game memorable. In terms of interface, Double Fine did away with the verbs for the remaster to have more on screen, I guess. And I get the decision, but I am a fan of verbs. I mean, just remember what I said in my Dragon Sphere video. I love me some verbs in adventure games. I really do love that kind of thing, but now things are a little more streamlined. All you have to do is right click on something and you can see all the possible verbs for an object. In some ways, it can feel like your hand is being held, but in other ways, it's better than having to work out the right verb for a solution you already know. Ultimately, I'm kinda indifferent about this, but you can actually get the verbs back by enabling Classic Mode anyway. Classic Mode is accessible through a single button press here, much like the remakes of the first 2 Monkey Island games, with the same smooth transition. Although there is one questionable part of the remaster. Look at this painting in Classic Mode. Not entirely sure who it is, it looks a little like Kyrandia, but I wonder who that is in the remastered version. Boom. It's Jar Jar. You know, I think that painting is the key to all this. I mean, if they got that painting working, I mean, it's a funnier painting than they've ever had in Day of the Tentacle before. In the past, Hoagie meets some ancestors of Dr. Fred, some of whom are very different.
Neither of us are following in his tiny scientific footsteps.
And others are not so different.
I'm inventing, you simpleton. What's it look like I'm doing?
Hoagie also comes into contact with several figures from history because, I mean, they're just here for some reason. It's a bit random, but at the same time, I kinda love it. He meets George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Hancock, and Benjamin Franklin.
The science of electrodynamics, much like your mind apparently, is still in a state of relative infancy.
That stings, Benjamin. Because of the time travel element to this game, it actually ends up being a puzzle mechanic. Yeah, you can actually use the butterfly effect to your advantage. It's an awesome concept, and I think the only other time I've seen it used is in Season 2 of Sam & Max. Basically, things you change in the past can have effects in the present and beyond. For instance, Hoagie can change the design of the American flag into a tentacle, and then Laverne can repurpose this flag into a tentacle disguise in the future. Yeah, it's totally ridiculous, but I love the puzzle design here, it's just so fun. Another important puzzle mechanic is the chronogon, and while the characters can't interact with each other directly, they can send items to each other. You'll find yourself doing this a lot and there's no limit to what you can send. You can send the wrong items and the game doesn't tell you not to do that. You'll have to choose what each character may or may not need. And of course, what would a LucasArts adventure game be without some witty comments here and there?
I'm not touching it. These models have a history of leakage.
I don't blame you, Bernard. Yeah, they do poke fun of the microwave hamster incident in the first game and this one. Quite often, actually. The references of violence towards hamsters is apparent right from the beginning.
Look, Hoagie, it's a hamster. Just what I need for dissection lab tomorrow.
I think I need that for the band, Laverne. You know, like we could bite its head off or whatever.
Poor little guy even gets microwaved in this one. Luckily only to defrost him after Bernard puts him in an icebox for 200 years. But I did get a bit worried for him. You can get him a cute jumper though. He's got a little jumper. I mean, I love this game. It goes without saying that this game is really damn funny. I mean, LucasArts were amazing at that. Every joke they would make, especially in comparison to Sierra titles, would be genuinely funny. Sierra could be funny, but their humour, it wouldn't always land. At least in my opinion. There's a lot of slapstick humour here. And there's a lot of wit too.
I'm no marble delivery man, but rock is my life.
You know, I honestly live for dumb puns like that. And in standard LucasArts fare, you have to act like a complete asshat in order to get things done in this game. Ruin a guy's art career? You can do that. Destroy George Washington's teeth? You can do that. Ruin a mentally unstable man's stamp collection? Wouldn't you know, you can do that too. It's pretty much just classic LucasArts to be doing stuff like this. And it is funny, even if you do feel bad for the lives you may ruin in order to, well, usually just steal a single item. This isn't the longest game ever, I mean it shouldn't take more than a few hours to beat, but it is a wonderful, zany, bizarre experience nonetheless. The universe has so many bizarre things in it that when you see something like a talking horse...
Hi, horsey.
Oh, hi yourself.
You just accept it. That's just something that exists in this game, you might as well just accept it. The game is mechanically impressive, offering some of the strangest and most out there puzzles that are never so obscure that they have you annoyed. I'd say it's almost perfect. It's graphically unique and stylized in a way that draws you into this insane cartoon universe. And this is only accentuated by the remaster. Not to mention, the remaster includes developer commentary, concept art, and a totally redone soundtrack as well. I feel like I'm being a bit too positive here, but the game really is that good. It's some of LucasArts' finest work, and Double Fine did an amazing job bringing it back to the 21st century. If I'm being honest, I'd like to see them get their hands on Sam & Max Hit the Road as well. I feel like Double Fine would do an amazing job remastering that one. And they're already doing Full Throttle for next year, so that should be pretty awesome too. And I don't know how to end this video, so I'm just gonna let Dr. Fred do the honours.
Well, kiddies, it's been more fun than a jumpsuit full of weasels. Now, kindly get your freakish hide out of my home.
Total conversion mods have always been really interesting to me. I mean, the first video I ever did in this channel was a video about a Doom total conversion, and since then I haven't actually discussed anything else to do with total conversions on this channel. A lot of my favourite total conversions are based on the Half-Life engine, Gold Source. There's something about this specific engine that I really love. I love how things sound and I love how things look. Half-Life mods just ooze charm to me, and none have ever oozed so much charm as Afraid of Monsters, the spiritual precursor to Cry of Fear. And I do like Cry of Fear, it's an incredible feat for the engine, but I just like Afraid of Monsters more, okay? And I want to talk about it. And so I wanted to get spooky in this episode. I know it's not Halloween, but I wanted to get spooky anyway. Here's the skeleton. I'm gonna get mileage out of this guy, I will. Afraid of Monsters was first released in 2005, but the version that most people are familiar with is the director's cut from 2007, so let's just get into it. I never really like talking about menu screens because it feels a little pretentious at times, but I have to mention the music in the background here. The song that we can hear right now is Stone in Focus from Aphex Twin, which is surprisingly serene in comparison to this spooky face in the background here. You see, a lot of horror games try to be spooky from the get-go, but here we have an odd calm, which is somehow terrifying in its own way. Afraid of Monsters doesn't begin with a lot of fanfare. You start off in a hospital, with the main character David Leatherhoff talking about pills in the bathroom. The pills here are both a storytelling and gameplay mechanic. They act as your basic health packs in regular gameplay, and they fulfill an important role in the overall story arc, although I won't really be discussing the story too much. One of the first things that happens is David is forced through some kind of nightmare or hallucination, which mostly amounts to platforming puzzles, dark rooms, and a few mild jump scares. Essentially here, you are told to keep on the red path, even if the game tries to tell you otherwise. Nah, I'm good, thanks. Of course, whispering voices in the dark are the voices you should trust when you're having a disturbing nightmare. Honestly, I've never been a fan of platforming in the Gold Source engine. It always feels a little slippery and difficult to pull off. But the game never focuses too hard on this, so there's just the occasional jump. After this, you end up at the hospital again, and what appears to be real life. Oh, real life as far as we know, but I'll get into that. And it's completely abandoned. Some rooms are boarded up, many doors are locked, and it's really eerie. There isn't a single person in sight, there's no sign of anyone going anywhere, there's just nobody. The game then gives you a knife to break things with, although getting weapons in horror games is never something to be excited about. Trust me. When a horror game gives you a weapon, that means you have to use it. And that means monsters. If I'm being honest, the whole hospital area of this game is not that fun or interesting. To start with, there's a lot of exploration in this area. It isn't too difficult to navigate until you need to turn off the power to get past some exposed wires. And this starts the actual threat in the game. Once the lights are out, monsters begin to appear. And they are fast. These aren't shamblers, these aren't even runners, they're just quick, creepy shufflers. They twitch a lot as well. It gives them this unnatural vibe that's really disconcerting. They come at you very fast and they can catch you off guard a lot, especially when they hide behind doors or slouch down. It's always good to see a twist on the zombie formula that makes them, you know, actually kinda scary. But only kinda. I mean, look at that cute hard hat. Not to mention, they do 10 damage per hit, at least on medium difficulty. And considering that health is sparse in this game, you really don't want to tangle with these guys. Also, this hospital area is very difficult when you're constantly in the dark and every area looks the same. The dark environments here don't pair very well with the Half-Life engine. You see, the way flashlights work in this engine means that they only light up a spot, whereas in more modern games you have a light cone. Now, some other mods have achieved this, like Mistake and Cry of Fear. Although an argument could be made that this type of flashlight is a lot scarier, and it pretty much is because you can barely see, even with the flashlight on. Look, if you're gonna do a horror game with loads of dark areas, you have to do the flashlight right. I'm looking at you, Doom 3. I'd say the biggest problem with the flashlight in this game is the batteries though. You can only have your flashlight on when you have batteries, and while they do regenerate automatically, it's very slow and very frustrating at times. You'll often find yourself just standing in the dark waiting for your flashlight to recharge. You really do want to recharge your flashlight before running into a dark room, because chances are something resembling a dead Mario will shuffle along and slap you in the face. And you don't want that. David has dignity. I mean, look at that face. That is the face of a dignified man. Even if Tumblr does want to draw porn of you. Ugh. Oh good god, David, what has Tumblr done to you? It's definitely unwise in this game to take on more than one enemy at once, because ammo is just as valuable as health and batteries, and you really don't want to be pushed back into using your knife. Remember that the monsters do a lot of damage here, and keeping distance between them and you is imperative to survival in this game. When you take a step back and look at this game, what you have is Half-Life with a horror theme. There are many monsters here which are just reskinned Half-Life creatures, and you know, that makes these guys the zombies, these things are head crabs, and these handstand dudes are bull squids and so on. And you know, in some ways this works to its advantage. Basically, there's a sense of familiarity with them combined with their twisted natures. I mean, when I reached this specific room with water in it, I was deathly afraid of the water. Why? Because these things exist in Half-Life, and they're already scary. What would the Afraid of Monsters equivalent be? So is there anything there? I don't exactly want to say, but that black opaque water always feels like it's hiding something, which to me is good horror. It makes people afraid of something. It makes people afraid of monsters. Wow, that was cheesy. There are a couple of more original monsters though, such as the ever-hilarious wheelchair zombie, which I honestly found kind of adorable. I mean, as adorable as a green bag of garbage can be, I suppose. Listen, I'm allowed to enjoy my garbage, okay? Although you shouldn't underestimate them because they can kill you. I actually found this out when I streamed the mod recently. Hi there. Oh god. What the? What was that? Okay. There are also these things. I have no idea what else to refer to them as. They're basically like a manifestation of game glitches as a monster. And they're really scary when you first come across them because you actually have no idea what you're looking at. Also, giant faces. Yeah, I'm completely unsettled by things like this. I just get flashbacks to the ghouls of the Ghouls Forest Doomwads. You know, I should really talk about those guys at some point. The only other time I've mentioned them is when I saw one in a McDonald's hat in the Doom Christmas video I did. I'm still really upset about that. The AI isn't the best in Afraid of Monsters. You can often just outsmart your enemies by placing yourself somewhere that tricks them. I mean, you can even stand on the heads of certain enemies to beat them. Once you leave the hospital, this mod gets a lot better. The level design improves, it feels more varied, and it has some genuinely creepy areas and decent scares. I mean, some of the earlier scares are kinda lame. Yeah. What's really impressive to me is that this mod was envisioned by a kid. The creator of Afraid of Monsters, Rumpel, cites himself as being 12 to 14 when he made the original mod. And yeah, I may be playing the updated version from later on, but still, this level design is highly impressive. He basically did something that I only daydreamed of when I was that age. I mean, there is some clear inspiration from the level design of Half-Life with all the vents and elevator shafts. I mean, seriously, there are a lot of vents and elevator shafts here. Although when you're using Half-Life as a base, you kinda have to expect this. I would say it falls victim to some of the classic tropes of early first-person shooters though. Specifically, keys and buttons, which means you'll often have to backtrack to a door which is at the beginning of a map. Although it's not as blatant or maniacal as games like Hexen. That game is a nightmare to navigate. I mean, you'll press one button, you'll be like, I wonder which door it opened. There's about 10 to choose from. It kind of feels like arbitrary padding, to be honest. But other than that, the map is packed quite a lot into a small space because you quite often return to the start area having opened up a passageway. Even if it can feel annoying, there are plenty of shortcuts which don't feel forced. They feel like they could actually be there in that world. Again, Afraid of Monsters has a lot of small issues, but I still have fun playing it, even if I'm not as scared of it as I used to be. It's not the most impressive thing you'll come across, it's very much a spooky Half-Life, but it does have a creepy charm to it. And if you're going into it blind, you're going to be on edge, there's no doubt about that. The issues that this game does have don't harm the overall experience. I refrain from talking about the story because it follows a similar model to games like Silent Hill, with a lot of the game being metaphorical. It's not the most original way of telling a horror story, but I admire the twist of this game. It's much better than the they were dead all along twist. You know, I really hated that twist, oh, the main character was dead all along. Well, come on guys, theory channels have been telling me that every single main character is dead. I mean, keep up with the times. I actually have a lot of nostalgia for this game, but it's a different kind of nostalgia. I'm not saying I played this as a kid, because I didn't. I would have been way too scared. I mean, I was scared of Left 4 Dead when it came out. I mean, I was a pansy kid. I'm actually referring to what you could call YouTube nostalgia. And maybe that sounds a little weird, but hear me out. You see, back in the day, I used to watch a Let's Play duo called Spike and Barley. And they're a little obscure, but I found them to be one of the funniest duos out there. They don't upload a lot anymore, but their catalogue is still worth a watch in my opinion. And I think they're still funny to this day. The playthrough that they're most well known for is actually a playthrough of Afraid of Monsters, but there's actually a special twist that sets this one apart. So in this playthrough, the duo are playing through the game cooperatively in Sven Co-op, a Half-Life mod that allows co-op in several gold source games, including Afraid of Monsters. Anyway, they are joined by a third player who assumes the role of David Leatherhoff, but it's a creepy, psychopathic David Leatherhoff, and honestly, this is one of the most exciting and unpredictable elements of the playthrough. Leatherhoff here is controlled by a user by the name of Cockix who scares Spike and Barley by teleporting them around, painting things on the walls, and just generally being creepy. I mean, it's hilarious.
Rock, paper, scissors, go. Rock, paper, scissors, go.
Fire!
Rock, paper, scissors, go.
Oh shit!
What?
He was right next to you!
Oh my god!
Even if you're not a fan of Let's Players, this is something you should watch. The stuff that David does is very well done. It's so well done, in fact, that I never even realised he was a player at first. I actually thought it was part of the game. So why am I talking about Spike and Barley's playthrough so much? Well, you see, back in 2011 and 2012, I was a Let's Player too. We all have our starts somewhere, and Let's Plays inspired by this duo were pretty much my start in making regular videos. I mean, sure, I was ripping off their humour style and I was 1,000 times less funny, but the playthroughs that Spike and Barley did, most notably the Afraid of Monsters one, inspired me to take the current path that I'm on and make videos. And over the years, I actually got to talk to both Spike and Barley a couple of times. I'm sure I came across like an annoying fan, but hell, they're responsible for the passion that I have for making videos, and I kinda want to thank them for that. Their work takes me back to a time when YouTube was more about making fun videos and having a good time with friends and a laugh. But ultimately, I want to point out the massive role that Let's Plays, reviews, and other videos can have in games. Companies like Nintendo don't realise that someone might become interested in a game simply because of a Let's Play. Honestly, the way that I found out about Afraid of Monsters was through Spike and Barley, so in many ways, this game is my roots, the game that started it all for me. I mean, maybe that's a dramatic way of putting it, but it's kinda true. I always enjoy telling you about weird old games and mods like Afraid of Monsters that I've come across and played, and I love cracking jokes at them. That is my passion, and it's not gonna stop anytime soon. This feels like a really strange video because it started as a discussion about a horror game and it evolved into a discussion about a Let's Play. And if that's not a scary twist, I don't know what is. Here's the skeleton again. He looked at me. "2016 marks the reboot of two classic franchises, Doom and Ghostbusters." The 2016 rendition of Doom took me by surprise. It's an incredibly enjoyable, classic shooter full of fast-paced action, retro level design and awesome weaponry. Despite having a mediocre and unbalanced multiplayer and a severely limited mapping tool, Doom 2016 is probably a candidate for one of my favourite games of the year. On the other hand, the 2016 reboot of Ghostbusters has me skeptical. It could turn out very well, but Right now I'm a little bit wary. The trailers haven't really convinced me. So for now, I have my doubts. Also, people are allowed to be wary of a movie. It shouldn't be a point of contention, so let's please move past this. But regardless of whether or not these two reboots tickle your fancy, the originals are still awesome after all these years.
So awesome, in fact, that someone decided to combine the two in a mod for Doom, simply titled Ghostbusters Doom. You gotta admire the simplicity of it, haven't you?
Ghostbusters Doom initially started development in 1998 and was last updated in 2002. Unfortunately, it wasn't ever finished, but what's there is available to play. It was created by a user called Scuba Steve and features new weapons, enemies, levels, sprites and everything. A full overhaul of Doom 2. The game is actually based on both of the original Ghostbusters movies, and you play as Egon Spengler throughout the game.
And with that out the way, I'm excited to bust some ghosts.
The main menu for this mod is kinda cool, and you can see that they modded the font to have the Ghostbusters logo replacing the O. It's a little tacky, but it's also kind of adorable. Straight away, the game drops you off at the New York Public Library, one of the most iconic Ghostbusters scenes, and here's something you don't see often in Doom mods: friendly NPCs. Granted, they don't actually do anything, but they're definitely NPCs because it seems that they still have the alert noises of the zombies in Doom. So essentially, whenever a pedestrian sees you in this game, they growl at you.
Well, the people of New York have never been known for their good manners.
And you can actually kill these people and angry ghosts pop out of them. There aren't any repercussions for your actions unless you count the angry ghosts attacking you. But still, it's quite bizarre that murder is actually a thing in this Ghostbusters mod. I have to say that I really love the HUD in this mod, mainly because you can see Egon down there.
Sometimes mods do away with the Doom Guy face. You can't get rid of the Doom Guy face. It's just wrong.
The best part though is when you're firing a weapon down and he pulls this face.
So it's kind of like a...
Gotta be honest though, this library is a labyrinth. Who would design a library like this? Although there are a lot of set pieces that represent the movie, like the stacked books.
You're right, no human being would stack books like this.
And like the movie, you come across the jump scare ghost.
Get her!
And then you're forced out and the level ends with a groovy screen. I bet even Ray Parker Jr. himself could get down with this remix. The fire station is included as a level here as well, and you can slide down the pole, which, as a Ghostbusters fan, is pretty awesome. Of course, there's also a great MIDI of the Ghostbusters theme here. You can't beat a good MIDI. On the other hand, I'm not sure if this mod understands how mirrors work. I mean, can you see what's wrong here? Let me illustrate. Here's how it should be, and here's how it is in-game. To be fair, if this was corrected, this is a pretty clever way of doing a mirror. As in, if you look at the map, you can see that the mirror area is actually another room, and the mirror itself is actually a window. It's always interesting to see how people get around the limitations of Doom with stuff like this. So then we press a button next to a huge computer. Like, damn, that is a meaty build right there.
I suppose the main question for me is, can it run Crysis?
This button causes the front doors to open up and we enter the Ecto 1. And you can actually drive around the streets of New York. You have to admit, this mod for its time was pretty ambitious. The car itself is actually coded as a weapon, I believe based off the chainsaw. What this causes is a car that's not really a car, it's a bit of an illusion. You can still see the view bob while moving, and the car doesn't handle any differently than when you do on foot. The whole car in Doom thing is an interesting idea, but it feels so bizarre when it's the same as controlling a person. You can also go full GTA on pedestrians, and it's kinda hilarious because it just looks dumb. Watch out everybody, Egon's drunk and causing havoc in the city. In addition, this area introduces the first enemies, and I think many of them are just original creations. Honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of them. They seem a little out of place. Not to mention, this area is so annoying to navigate. I mean, I assumed I was supposed to be at this hotel like in the movie, but I couldn't find parking. Like literally, I couldn't find a parking space.
And they say video games are an escape from reality.
The next level is supposed to be the hotel where the guys find and capture the iconic Slimer, but unfortunately this level appears to be unfinished, so I guess we move on. The next level seems really disconnected from the rest. I'm not sure if it was a planned secret level, but I'm pretty sure this mansion was never part of the movie at all. And this rain is definitely a little bit too much, like I actually can't see.
This is fine.
I ended up not finishing this specific level though because I wasn't given enough ammo and there were loads of bootleg cake demons and zombies. I mean, I don't think zombies were actually a thing in the Ghostbusters movies, at least not as far as I know. And these guys never seem to shut up about fresh meat.
Fresh meat. Fresh meat.
You'd think they'd be queuing up for the butchers or something.
Fresh meat.
I did try to cheat and give myself some weapons, but I accidentally gave myself the Ecto 1, and there's no escape from that apparently.
You want to cheat, buddy? Well, screw you. We're locking you in the car, it's the middle of summer, we're not even going to wind the windows down. That's what you get. That's what you get for cheating.
And so we move onwards, and we cut straight to a more iconic scene of the movie, where Walter Peck forces the Ghostbusters to shut off the containment grid, causing a bit of a ghost meltdown. And here's Walter Peck in game. Yep, you can knock him out. Heading upstairs, Slimer finally makes an appearance, and again, I barely have any equipment to use on these things. Then one of those demon dog things turns up as well, and they look great. So finally we're getting to the end of Ghostbusters 1 and we have the apartment building. So you fight your way up and you meet this guy.
Oh, beautiful. You know what I wanted to see today? It was that. It was that right there. I definitely wanted to see that. That guy right there. Highlight on my day.
If you've got the stones to make it through that and some of the demon dogs, you can get to the rooftop. Now here we have a fairly complete section of the game, and one of the coolest honestly. After interacting with Gozer, you of course get to fight the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and I really love how it's done here. Essentially what you have is a sprite on top of a polygonal body, but it pulls off this illusion in the Doom engine that ends up looking quite awesome. This version of Stay Puft spits hot fire at you until you zap him down to size.
So that's Ghostbusters 1 covered in a very abridged game form. It's kind of cute really, even if it can get a bit weird at times.
From what we can see of this mod, it captures the original movie really well, even some of the humour. There's also a few Ghostbusters 2 levels, but I think by this point you get the gist. Of course there are a few things that don't quite work. I mean, some of the enemies seem a little out of place in the universe, and I'm not entirely sure if the weapons really translate well. The proton pack feels great at least, if not a bit loud. To me, the other weapons feel kind of filler, and overall it feels like the ghosts are being murdered as opposed to being caught. But still, it's a fun little total conversion for Doom that shouldn't be taken too seriously. And it stands as a reminder that fans can capture the spirit of something else they love by utilising the modding capabilities of the game. I think it's sad that this kind of modding isn't as supported or encouraged as it used to be. I mean, you can't make Ghostbusters with Snap Map, nor could you make a series of levels based on regular Doom. I mean, look at Deus Vult, look at Back to Saturn X, look at the Golden Souls. Modding tools are a foot in the door for many people to exercise their creativity in game design and make something interesting. I can't necessarily recommend Ghostbusters Doom in its unfinished state, but it might be worth a little look if you're curious. Myself, I just love exploring strange little oddities like this. Maybe it's a weird thing to do with my time, but hey, I get to talk about these things sometimes.
Overall, my emotions can be summed up with that one face. It's just beautiful.
Osamu Sato is a Japanese graphic designer, photographer and composer. His work quite often uses psychedelic qualities, and we can see this through his various pieces. This specific set, known as Alphabetical Orgasm, were his first work and were exhibited in Tokyo in 1991.
Despite this, he's probably most well known for his work in gaming.
Probably most famously, he's known for LSD Dream Emulator, a PS1 title often praised for its strange sights and disorienting style of play. But LSD isn't the only game that Sato worked on. As a matter of fact, his first title was a Mac game called Eastern Mind: The Lost Souls of Tong No, which was ported to PC in 1995. The game is actually a point and click in first person, and it plays similarly to games like Myst. So right off the bat, you have to expect strange things out of this game. After all, Osamu Sato is no stranger to bizarre imagery, and you can't expect any different here.
But how strange can it get? Let's find out.
Eastern Mind throws you straight in and doesn't even dignify you with a worded main menu. It's one of those games. And yeah, I think this is the main menu, but I can't necessarily confirm that. Also, that drum beat in the background, you might recognise it. It's the same drum beat used in the Half-Life track Jungle Drums, which is used when fighting the Gonarch in Zen.
It's probably not at all relevant, but it's worth noting. I mean, I found it interesting anyway.
So, unlike LSD, Eastern Mind has somewhat of a narrative. So here you play as a character called Rin, who one day discovered the absence of a soul.
Oh, don't you just hate it when that happens?
And essentially there's an island called Tong that supposedly devours souls. And eventually the human without their soul will die in emptiness. Yeah, the translation's a little off at times. On the way to Tong Rin encounters a white snake and receives a furoshiki and an amulet, or as the game calls it, an amulet. With 2 L's. And apparently, this is the island. Yes, it's the green face of Osamu Sato floating in the void. What else would it be? I really love the fact that it's actually him though. The guy was just like, you know what, I'm gonna be the island. That island? It's me. And you can find a jail in his cheek which contains a chest with a book in it, because of course.
Listen, there's no point being surprised about things that happen in this game. We know it's gonna be weird. We might as well accept that fate.
Going further in, I find 5 flames, and clicking on one takes me to a supposed land of time. You can probably already tell that this game and LSD have quite a bit in common. You can click on something and find yourself in a new weird place. I do think there's a little more rhyme and reason to this game though. Like I said, there is a narrative here. So we end up at this fire tower, which is a very long climb. Although we do run into a creature by the name of Gashor. My name is Gashor. From the bottom to the top. Shall I put on a show? Gashor.
Now that's poetry.
We also meet this green guy who rhymes, although I think I upset him somehow. I guess our rhymes don't mean a thing. Well, geez, I'm sorry. Oh, and graphically I think there's something kinda wrong with my version of the game. Things are really twitchy at times. I guess the animations are just playing too fast, which isn't surprising considering this is an older game designed for slower machines. Although it does add to the weirdness factor, I suppose.
Unexpected benefit from technical glitch?
As we reach the top, we meet the twins Yin and Yang, and we have 3 guesses for this computer. 3 guesses for what though? I have no clue, so I just punched in things at random until... Your time has been deleted. You have passed away. You breathed your last. But do not fear death. From now you will acquire 9 lives. Eventually, you will discover your own self. For the first time. So, from what I can gather, this game actually encourages reincarnation in different ways. Given that this game is called Eastern Mind, it's unsurprising that it employs the ideas of Eastern philosophy. That being said, it's still very unclear what my goal is. I guess I need to find Rin's soul, but let's be honest, I have no idea how to do that. Also, you get given a form based on some features that you choose. So you choose some eyes, a nose, and a mouth. And this is me.
I gotta be honest here, I look great.
There is some guidance here. We need to find this tree. Is it somewhere in this forest? I assume so. And this little Pop-Tart monster seems to be giving directions. He also has twisted ideas of fun. I've got my eyes on you, Pop-Tart. Pop-Tart. Eventually, after exploring this labyrinth of a forest, I come across the Tree of Life. And when I get there, I find this dude, who is the king of Minken. It tells me to register my name and the names of the 4 Zogeirus.
And those are... things.
These guys are all in different parts of the forest, and according to the book I found earlier, each have their own personalities. For example, the purple one is a nihilist, and I kinda love that. The description that this game gives us so in depth and yet completely ridiculous. So, fulfilling the request of the king, I actually wrote down their names, like I literally wrote them down, but I didn't know how to get the tree to know that. And eventually I ended up clicking somewhere and I ended up at the Land of Dreams. The Land of Dreams is called Mon Chien, which is French for my dog, although I think that's a coincidence. In related news, here's my dog. He's called Alfie. The Land of Dreams is also a strange place, unsurprisingly. I came across the Pop-Tart guy again, but this time he had this to say. Among. Very bad. Don't talk. No, no, no.
Well, that sure sounds inspiring. I feel very safe.
I also came across a creature embedded in ice. Huh. Being in ice is heartbreaking, so maybe I can save him. I'll help you, buddy. Just stay there. Frozen? Kinda looks dead. Okay, but seriously, I think I just murdered this thing and my character spouted a one-liner.
Just accept it. This kind of thing just happens in games like this. Just don't ask any questions because there's no answers.
Eventually I found myself back at the green face and I accidentally initiated this thing where bumps bounce everywhere across the face.
I didn't know how to escape this, so I kind of just quit the session because I was stuck and I couldn't do anything. I'm sorry.
So what did my first session of Eastern Mind tell me? Well, it told me I wasn't very good at documenting aliens for one thing, but other than that I wasn't sure what was going on nor what I actually had to do to make progress. Mostly, I was just exploring, but there's clearly something here. This seems like a game which has a following for a reason, and that reason is there are people who get it, who understand the various aspects of it. I don't think it's supposed to be disorienting, unlike LSD. I mean, there's a whole in-game book about various creatures and characters who have distinct personalities.
So I don't think I'm done yet, and I'm going to try and make progress. Which means game facts, but can you blame me?
So as it turns out, there are various forms in this game, each with specific objectives. These forms are defined by the features, and I ended up being a form called Tor. Tor's objective from the tree guy is to register those 4 little weird things, remember? And do you also remember that fire tower with all the buttons? That is where you have to register them. In hindsight, I probably should have put it together from the symbols on the buttons, but I was stuck at Bounce Face.
There is no escape from Bounce Face. I don't know why. There's no escape.
After completing an objective for one of the forms, you are given a nameplate of the form, and you can start on your next mission as a new character in a new life. And you keep doing this for every form until you're done. You could actually link this with the philosophical idea of absurdism, which is the idea that we exist in a purposeless, chaotic universe, and we search for our own purposes regardless of this. There's an episode of the TV show Angel called Epiphany that sums this up, I think.
The greater scheme and the big picture. Nothing we do matters. There's no grand plan, no big win.
You seem kind of chipper about that.
Well, I guess I kind of worked it out. If there's no great, glorious end to all this, if nothing we do matters, then all that matters is what we do.
One character who is famously known to be the symbol of this idea is Sisyphus of the Greek myths, who was punished for his deceitful nature by being forced to roll a boulder up a hill and have it roll back down again for eternity. But in that moment where he looks back and chooses to try again, that is embracing the absurd. Now in Eastern Mind, Sisyphus is Rin, and the boulder is the various lives that you live. The purpose that you have is the boulder being pushed upwards, and when you achieve that goal, you have to do it all again in a different life. I suppose the difference here is that there is an end to the game, but hypothetically, it could keep going forever. Is it intentionally designed like this? I don't know, but someone could probably make this point. I'm maybe looking a bit too far into this.
Please ignore any signs that point to me sounding like I know what I'm talking about, because I probably don't.
I mean, I'm bringing up the way I see the world in regards to a game where a seductive red alien needs to be documented, so anything goes really. Anyway, remember that frozen thing that died? Apparently, that's actually one of the forms that Rin goes through. The website Obscuratory ran an article on Eastern Mind in 2012, giving its own take on the game. And it describes this appearance of another form as a massive middle finger to the concept of linear time. It also seems that the point of this game is to die repeatedly. As a matter of fact, the article that I just mentioned says that this means that death gives your life meaning, and I think that's an absolutely fascinating way of putting it.
It's difficult to find resources to explain this game, so I'm just trying my best to explain this game from what I understand, and what I understand is probably really superficial.
What I do know is that this game and its sequel Tang have a fairly significant cult following. These games have fan art and even speedrun communities. Despite the obscurity, there's definitely a legacy here, but what a strange thing this game is. Obviously, Japanese games have a reputation for the bizarre, but this is a whole new level. It's an existential art gallery that looks at the absurdity of life and death and then pokes fun at it. Or at least that's my interpretation. As a game, it's a little bit of an assault on the senses. My first time playing was actually kind of scary because there were just weird things jumping out at you. It's only when you look deeper into it and explore the lore behind it that it becomes more of a game. And whether or not you think that's acceptable will probably weigh your interest in Eastern Mind. A lot of stuff just happens, a lot of characters just turn up and leave. Do they have relevance? Probably, but I'll be damned if I know what the hell this guy wants. An unguarded moment will invite a thief.
Who's the thief? Am I the thief? Is he the thief? I don't know who the thief is.
And then you do some research and learn that there are certain characters to avoid because they steal items. You see, everything has meaning here, it just feels like things don't because of all the weird stuff that happens. It is certainly one of the weirdest games I've ever come across. I'm sure there are people out there who have the drive to understand every little bit of it. I might get to that point eventually. There's a lot here to get your head around, which is both awesome and daunting. So if you want to try, I provided some links in the description, and be sure to report back to me with your findings. I mean it. In the meantime, I'm gonna think about my own mortality. I don't know how to end videos. One of the things that gets pointed out quite often in my videos is these guys in the back. The LEGO Bionicles from 2003. Over the past few videos, I've been gradually increasing the number of them in the background. Did none of you think that I might be building up to something? I mean, the red figure, Tahu, appeared earlier this year, and in the last video, the blue figure, Gali, appeared. These were actually subtle hints for me getting my teeth stuck into something I've wanted to review for years, which is Bionicle, the Mask of Light. You might not be aware of what Bionicles are, so if you're unsure, I'll give you a brief history lesson. The Bionicles were a series of toys by LEGO that used their Technic pieces, and they were basically this fantasy universe full of masks of power and good versus evil. They first came out in 2001, and there was a rebooted version recently which just got cancelled. Like literally a few days after I wrote this script. For a kid, this range was awesome and I grew up collecting these. I have loads of them now that I've bought and kept over the years, but many people agree that Bionicle was at its best towards the start of its life. So that year, in addition to the comics and the books, they also opted for a direct-to-DVD movie with The Mask of Light. Before we begin, I should probably give a lowdown on the lore. It's a little jargon heavy, so it's only fair that I bring you up to speed. So there's an island called Matanui, which is inhabited by villagers called Matoran and elders called Turaga, and they all adhere to 6 elements, each with their own settlements on the island. There's fire, water, air, ice, stone and earth. And to protect these villages, there are 6 heroes known as Toa who also adhere to these elements. For instance, this is the Toa of Water Tahu, and that's the Toa of Water Gali. They each have masks which have certain powers, and they use these to fight against the bad guy known as Makuta. It's kind of simple once you get past all the jargon, so let's just get into the movie already. The Mask of Light begins with some exposition with the voice of an old man, and this whole sequence is intensely nostalgic for me. Especially when I hear this.
Listen again to our legend of the Bionicle.
It's like I'm transported right back to my childhood. It's amazing. The intro explains that there are 3 virtues that they kinda worship, adhere to. Not sure how to phrase that, but these 3 virtues are unity, duty, and destiny, which is represented through this symbol. And remember that because it's actually kind of important later on. The story begins at Tarkoro, which is the village of fire, and home to the 2 protagonists of this movie, Jala and Takua. Jala is headstrong and sensible, and Takua is kind of the opposite. So they consistently play quite well off each other in this movie. It's a pretty good matchup of characterization. And also they're kind of adorable. I mean, look at their dumpy little walks. However, Jala's voice is really not adorable.
Takua!
It's kinda grating. In this opening scene, Jala is looking for Takua because they have a match of Koli to go to, which is like 3-way hockey with 2-man teams. However, Takua would rather channel his inner Indiana Jones, and risk his life for this rare artifact that's just there in the city, for some reason. By the way, Takua is actually nicknamed the Chronicler. Because I assume he's always in search of adventure, or a chronicle, basically. Of course, in true Indiana Jones fashion, there's a trap of sorts, and the totem gets dropped into the lava. Although, surprise, surprise, a mask rises to the top. The Mask of Light, obviously.
Never seen this language.
You see, in this universe, masks of power belong to important people, and so the quest of Takua and Jala for the rest of this movie is to find out who it belongs to. But first, Takua needs to get across this lava river. It seems like he wouldn't be able to do it right, it's a bit too far for a small guy like him. But don't worry, because he has a surfboard. Yeah, he gets saved by Toa Tahu ex machina, but I suppose it's a decent way to set up the character. So yeah, Tahu saves Takua, and Jala calls Takua a...
Coley head.
Which is a weird insult, that's like calling someone hockey-faced.
Although now that I think about it, that's actually a pretty good insult.
Speaking of hockey, the duo go to their match and almost turn up late. There's also this really sneaky reference that I never picked up on before.
Play well.
Overall in the match, our main duo lose quite spectacularly, mainly because Takua tries a front flip that almost murders the village elders.
Keep that move in mind, it's actually a very important plot point.
We also meet two other Toa here, but they don't seem to share much love for each other for some reason. Except the Toa of Stone Pahatu, because he's just adorable.
Nothing gets by the captain of the guard, unless he wishes it.
Also, flirting?
Are they allowed to do that? Is that a thing in this world? I don't want to think about it.
Anyway, after the match, the Mask of Light is accidentally revealed, and Takua manages to make it look like all Jala's fault. And so, Jala is sent on a quest to find the 7th Toa. I mean, honestly, being put on a destiny quest by accident sounds like a nightmare, but it'd probably be a little too awkward to back out of it, so yeah, I don't envy Jala. It's technically supposed to be Takua's quest as well, but Jala doesn't forget that.
And Takua, the chronicler, has volunteered to join me.
Ooh, good save, buddy.
There's actually a prophecy for the 7th Toa, and the Herald of the Mask must go on a journey to find him, so that the Great Spirit, who is also the island, can be awakened, whatever that means. So Jala and Takua go on their quest, but meanwhile, Baddie McBadguy is making some Baddie McHenchmen to do evil. Yeah, this villain is a little bit on the nose. He's just like, grr, darkness, I'm so bad and evil, look at these monsters I make. You've got to admire a villain who just revels in their evil. So what Makuta makes are called Rakshi. They're basically like worm monsters in robot costumes. And they can fly with their legs. And they make Star Wars noises.
Oh, what's that up there? Oh, that must be my disbelief. Suspended.
While searching for the mask, they attack Tarkoro and they completely destroy the whole place. The whole goddamn village. They sink it. I don't even know how that's possible, but the Toa couldn't do anything. Baffling. It's also worth noting that one of the Rakshi actually poisons Tahu with a cut on his mask. And as a result, he seems more melodramatic than before.
You worry about scratches. My village is gone. Your power was nothing. My power was nothing.
Whose angry child is this?
Blissfully unaware, Takua and Jala find themselves in the jungle. Where exactly is their destination? It's kind of unclear. While in the jungle, they're attacked by a bear, or a robot bear, I suppose. Jala tries to ride the bear because and Toa Liwa, who is the air guy, turns up to save them. And he totally isn't a Native American stereotype.
Well, I'd say you're a natural brave fire spitter. If Toa Liwa helped on your search, might he be a spirit lift?
He then flies them to the ice level. I mean, Kokoro. And then he leaves. Well, bye Liwa. We weren't with you for long, were we? A lot of this travelling seems like excuses to meet the other Toa, because then Kopaka turns up, Toa of Ice. Now, Kopaka is the token edgelord of the group. Maybe not quite Reaper levels of edgelord, but maybe about a Soldier 76 level edgelord.
I mean, if you go any further than that, then you kind of go into...
You're not even good enough to be my friend.
But to be honest, Kopaka is the coolest character, no pun intended. And I don't just think that because he was the first Bionicle I ever had. Basically, the Rakshi appear and attack the Matoran, and Kopaka completely destroys them. No, wait, no, he'll do it. Just give him a second. He's fine. Just, nobody's gonna die, it's fine, just give him a second. Yeah, you see, there he is. See, he's the best. He totally didn't take a nap, he was just, recharging his batteries so he could put in a cool attack. He's cool, don't worry about it. And then he just leaves. He doesn't say goodbye or anything, he just goes.
He just left us here.
He must see to his village.
Got an itch to scratch.
Jala and Takua then reach a tunnel. So then Takua reads this sign.
Onokoro Highway.
But, wait.
Never seen this language.
Never seen this language.
Onokoro Highway.
Never seen this language.
This is the language that they use in this world. How could he not read it before?
I mean, this is pretty important. You can't just do this to us like we're not gonna notice. We do notice these things.
But whatever, moving on. Takua becomes separated from Jala and Makuta's all like,
Yo dude, I know I'm two floating red eyes in the void, but you should totally give that all-powerful mask to me.
And Takua's like, man, I don't know, this doesn't sound quite right, I'm scared, dude. And Makuta's like,
do it.
So then, Takua chickens out of his quest, even though Jala isn't actually the chosen one, and Takua is fully aware of this. He also makes Bahatu look dumb in front of everybody.
Jala, the captain of the guard of Takora, and Takua the chronicler, even now seek the seventh Toa. Chronicler, where is the herald?
Wow. Way to make him look bad, Takua.
And then some new Rakshi appear and attack Onukoro, which is the Earth Village, by the way. And the Toa try to fend off the attackers, but struggle. This also cements that it's not the mask that's important, it's Takua. And because of this attack, he realizes this and meets back up with Jala in order to continue his quest with renewed vigor. Oh yeah, and remember that cut on Tahu's face? Well, it kinda makes him evil, temporarily. So they fix it though, so don't worry. I don't really know why that plot point is important. I mean, the Toa are side characters in the orbit of Takua's story, so this whole Tahu is temporarily corrupted thing is pointless because it kinda just happens, and then it's over.
It just doesn't really serve the plot at all. Like, the problem is solved so easily, and it doesn't matter in the overall arc. It's just so weird.
Although I like that it exists because it does add this hilarious scene between Gali and Kopaka.
Kopaka, do you think that Turaga were right about us? Have we lost our unity? Kopaka?
Kopaka just leaves again. I love him. So finally, the two Matoran end up at their destination. But where is the seventh Toa? And while they don't find him, they find the Rakshi. Again, this time with all six, including the ones that were defeated before. And all six Toa then arrive to help with some pretty cool synergies in their fighting.
And fire!
Makes glass!
You know, that's actually pretty awesome.
Although again, this does make the whole have we lost our unity plotline a little bit pointless. I mean, it's an interesting idea, but they don't really go anywhere with it. Despite defeating most of the Rakshi, one of them makes it to Takua, and Jala bravely tries to fend it off, but sacrifices himself in the process of doing so. Ultimately, this culminates in the realization that the seventh Toa is not a person to be found, but a person to become. And Takua puts on the mask, and he becomes Takanuva, Toa of Light.
I am Takanuva, Toa of Light.
That power, that destiny, that ability to do great things, that was inside you all along.
You know, I like that message for a kids movie. It's kind of sweet and it's really empowering. I can get behind it.
The journey wasn't a journey to a physical place for Takua, but a mental one. After transforming, it's clear that Takua isn't quite the jokester he used to be. I mean, his friend did just die, so I can let him off there. So with all this happening, it's time for destiny, right? He has to go beat up the bad man and awaken the Great Spirit. And then they apparently build a speeder bike thing. Well, I suppose they needed an excuse to bump up the price of the Takanuva Lego set. So the big battle is on the way, and Jala's almost girlfriend is there for some reason.
It's time someone was your chronicler.
Hasn't he caused enough civilian casualties for one night? Why add another one?
Holly, summon the Matoran.
It's done.
Oh, apparently he hasn't caused enough.
So, Takanuva and Makuta face off in a Koli match.
Perhaps for your next great failure, a simple game of Koli. Win, and you may try to open the gate.
Which is really bizarre. That's like if at the end of Return of the Jedi, the Emperor was just like,
Good, good. Now show me your badminton skills.
Like seriously? The final showdown is a sport? But hold on a second, let's cast our minds back to the Koli match earlier.
Keep that move in mind. It's actually a very important plot point.
Yep, he does the move. And Makuta, well, I mean, I can only say that he got absolutely wrecked. Like, totally destroyed. Completely annihilated. It's just hilarious how fast he gets flung. But Makuta isn't done yet, and Takanuva tries to take off his mask, and they both fall into this liquid, which is energized liquid protodermis.
Hold on, let me just bring up the wiki entry.
In Bionicle lore, this stuff transforms people, and this is why the original Toa became the Toa Nuva. Basically, it made them more powerful. So what comes out of this pool is a fusion of Makuta and Takanuva called, get ready for this, Takutanuva. I mean, I always thought this plot point was kinda dumb, and basically this being saves everyone in that room because apparently it's starting to collapse. He also brings Jala back to life. Because hey, why not negate the sacrifice of an important character so it means nothing? So once Takutanuva finishes his Hodor impression, he slides the mask under the door, signifying his own sacrifice for the Great Spirit.
So, I suppose this story still has one important sacrifice.
Just kidding, it's a kids movie. He comes back to life because whatever, good guys win. And as it turns out, different characters represent the 3 virtues in this movie, and they really hit it on the nose here. It would have been nicer if it wasn't so obvious, but whatever, it's kinda cute. Harley, the Water Matoran, represents unity because she rallied everyone into certain death. Jala represents duty because he sacrificed himself into certain death. And Takua represents destiny because of his certain death. Only one thing is clear, death is certain. But hey, whatever, let's set up a prequel movie.
The city of the Great Spirit, my island home, refound. New legends awake, but old lessons must be remembered. This is the way of the Bionicle.
Mask of Light was a major part of my childhood and it's still pretty enjoyable, which I didn't expect. It's definitely not the most solid plotline ever. I mean, it's very good guys always win, but it could be a lot worse. And the animation is a little janky at times, but it's still pretty decent. Obviously there are better looking movies out there from this time, but it's not bad. And other than the animation, the visuals aren't actually that bad for a direct-to-DVD movie. As a matter of fact, some of the surrounding environments are actually quite stunning. And the soundtrack is absolutely masterful. As far as kids movies go, it has a decent message, and it shows that anybody can do great things regardless of where they come from. And I like that. I suppose the dialogue and voice acting is a little cheesy at times, but what do you expect?
So, yeah. It's alright. I mean, it has a few minor little plot details that kind of either don't need to be there or don't make sense. But overall, it's a really solid kids movie. It's enjoyable, it's fun, it has a good message to it. I like it.
Seeing that IHE had done a search for the worst on this made me think that this was going to stand the test of time really badly, but that's not actually the case at all. This is a bizarre instance in which nostalgia actually pulled through. Despite the pretty big errors in the plot, it's pretty much as enjoyable as I remember it being.
Although I actually have one last thing to talk about. This is pretty important.
I have a theory about Puku. Puku is Takua's pet crab that accompanies him throughout the quest. And I believe that he's actually the Makuta in disguise, leading Jala and Takua into certain doom. Don't believe me? Well, let's look at the evidence. First of all, we never see Puku and Makuta in the same room. Surely, if they were different entities, we'd see them together. The strongest example of this is when Makuta talks directly to Takua, and Puku immediately turns back up when Makuta stops talking. But that's not all. There's evidence in the actual Lego set for this character. When you look at the actual set for Puku, he has the same hands as, you guessed it, another villain from this Lego universe. A villain who worked for Makuta. The third and final piece of damning evidence is pretty well hidden in the meta of the film. If you look on IMDb, it's pretty clear that Makuta is voiced by someone called Lee Tokar. But if you pan slightly to the right of that, you'll see the truth laid flat before you.
Puku is the villain. Wake up, America.
But that's just a theory. A lame theory.
And that's why I gave the Pope a copy of Bionicle Mask of Light. Most of my favourite point and clicks are either from Sierra or LucasArts, but there are quite a few that aren't, which is why today I want to talk to you about Legend of Kyrandia, the first in an often forgotten trilogy.
Legend of Kyrandia was released in 1992 by Westwood Studios, a studio who, if you've eaten your PC gaming Weetabix, you're probably at least somewhat aware of. They're the guys behind the Command & Conquer series as well as Dune 2, which is often considered to be the RTS game that defined RTS games for years to come. Westwood dipped their toes in many different genres though, and they were after a piece of the pie that LucasArts and Sierra were eating in the 90s. They even went as far as to use King Swift's name on the box, saying if you like those games, you'll like this one. Which is fair, considering that before Kyrandia was picked up by Virgin Interactive, it was actually pitched to Ken Williams' Sierra, and he loved the game. Although, after a fierce bidding war, Virgin came out on top. Believe it or not though, because of this advertising link between King Swift and Kyrandia, Westwood were forced to put a sticker on their cover explicitly stating that they were not affiliated despite the comparative marketing.
So, are they similar games? Yes and no.
Graphically, Legend of Kyrandia looks a lot like a LucasArts game. They even use the same font and a similar interface. However, in terms of gameplay, we have a point and click full of the whimsical and weird, with plenty of deaths, and a big goddamn labyrinth.
This could very well have been a Sierra game, but I'm getting a little bit sidetracked here, so let's actually get into the game itself.
The intro begins showing the island where the game takes place, Kyrandia, which, by the way, is really nice to look at. I've always loved the starting shot with the logo. There's a little bit of exposition detailing the villain of this game, Malcolm, who is an evil jester. The intro also shows his shenanigans, whereby he essentially loves to cause chaos. I mean, he blows up a squirrel. That kinda carries the point across. We then see an old man writing, and look at that animation. This is a game from 1992. Look at that depth of field. Like, dude, this is rad. Malcolm then appears and turns his poor old man, called Callach, to stone. You play this game as Brandon, who is a grandson of this poor old guy, who is a mystic, by the way. That's probably important to mention. Malcolm is actually after all the magic users in the land, from what I gather, and he starts with Brandon's poor old granddad, now frozen in stone. Although, Brandon seems pretty nonplussed by this whole dilemma.
At least I won't have to wash the windows today.
Hey, my granddad's potentially dead forever, but at least I won't have to clean the windows.
You gotta admit, Brandon really sees the silver lining. When you try to leave, a face emerges from the tree and tells you about the letter that Callach had been writing. It's addressed to Bryn, who resides in a nearby temple, so for now we have a basic goal to work towards in taking down Malcolm once again. The intro only really mentions that Malcolm has broken free and possesses the Kyra gem, which controls the magic of the land. Anyway, upon exploring Kyrandia, it's clear that it's a world full of vibrance and brightness, which contrasts to more modern fantasy settings which are bleak worlds grounded in more realism. That being said, there's nothing wrong with either of these styles, but it's nice to see a world that takes joy in colourful scenery and fantastic sights. Not that there's no peril here, of course, but the darkness in this world is more undertone than anything else.
I personally said it's very much the fantasy style of 80s movies, if that makes sense.
You know, tonally and visually it's similar to things like Willow, Labyrinth and the Black Cauldron. It's that kind of fantasy aesthetic. But I digress, because we should probably get on with Brandon's mission. So the first thing you do, as with most point and clicks of this style, is find some wise, possibly mystical person to set you on the right path. And so we talk to Bryn in the temple, and she's like, oh yeah, you have a destiny. You gotta bring me a rose.
It's explained better in game, I'm just paraphrasing.
Now, the first area of this game is this forest, and there are many locations to find here and pilfer items from, including the Pool of Sorrow. And apparently someone is crying off screen here.
The likelihood is there's some mighty number 9 backers up there. That's still topical, isn't it?
So you then catch a tear from this area, like you literally just catch it and put it in your pocket. I won't question it, it's adventure game logic. This tear is useful in healing the willow tree in this area, but that's just one of the things that you have to do. I like how this puzzle solution is actually alluded to as well, because there's a teardrop shape in the tree that you need to place a tear into.
Legend of Kyrandia does lots of little things like this, it makes the game really charming.
As soon as you heal the willow tree, a kid comes out and asks you if you want to see his marble.
That was amazing, Brandon. Wanna play? I'll show you this marble I found.
So you play hide and seek with this kid and you totally own him. So you can take the marble off him. That seems kinda like a dick move, right? Taking something from a kid? Well, it's actually from an altar that we need to use. So the kid's a dirty vandal, basically. He deserves no sympathy.
Yeah, the kid's a criminal, so he deserves to have things stolen off him. I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
So then you fix up the altar and change the rose into a white rose by bringing it to Bryn.
Wow. Is that for me?
Don't get your hopes up, Hotshot. Bryn informs you that you must meet with Dom, a wizard in the Timber Mist Woods who lives with his sassy dragon Brandywine.
Are you taking orders for cheese?
This is Brandon, you old dolt.
Hey, could you brush a dragon's teeth?
Anyway, before going to the woods, we have to use the white rose with the altar to give ourselves an amulet of power. Brandon has no powers yet though, not until we reach the Timber Mist Woods. Although in order to get to the Timber Mist Woods, you've got to cross this bridge.
I think we might be able to make it across though. I mean, if we just jump, I'm sure that'll work, right?
Let me just save first. Pay no mind to this save game name. Yeah, there we go.
I'm in charge here, and if anything happened to you, I'd get blamed.
I'm gonna try it, Herman.
Oh no.
Alright, yeah. Death scenes. Who doesn't love a good death scene in adventure games? Well, LucasArts apparently, but I like them. And this game has quite a few amusing ones that allow Brandon to fall at the foot of his own hubris.
This heat is pretty intense, but I know I can take it. Not a problem. I'm burning!
Did I mention that Brandon's really dumb? To be fair, these death scenes can be a little annoying at times, but as long as you save often, you'll be fine.
And I don't know why you wouldn't save often in an old adventure game anyway. That's a rookie mistake.
If you don't save in a game like this, you're just asking to set yourself back a few hours. So once you get the bridge fixed up, you can go see the wizard and his sassy dragon. And the wizard, wants a pen.
I'll need a quill.
A what?
To do that, we need a feather, but to get the feather, we need to heal this bird. And to heal this bird, we need to drop some nuts in a hole, which gives us the power of healing on our amulet.
Thank you for restoring life to the Deadwood Glade, and to express our appreciation, and so forth and so on.
So now, we have a healing power to use on ourselves or others, so we can heal the bird, get a feather, and finally Dom can write something. All that for a pen.
Come on, they're cheap from Tesco's, you don't gotta do all that.
So now Dom's like, find your birthstones.
He must find his birthstones.
Mirth cones?
What does this mean? Well, you may have noticed that I've been picking up various gemstones throughout the game. And there's another altar to sacrifice them at. There are loads of them scattered everywhere at this point, and this is where the mechanics of the game really become useful. In Legend of Kyrandia, you only have 10 inventory slots, but you can drop items for use later on. So here, it's good to find all the gems you can and drop them by the altar, because they don't despawn, they'll be there until you use them. I actually really like this mechanic, and it's a shame that it's not used in many other point and clicks I've played. It's far removed from the infinite pockets of Guybrush Threepwood, for example. There's also this cute little thing where if you drop an item, it bounces on the floor, and I just love it. It's adorable. I don't know why it is, but it just is. So much of this game is just cute. Anyway, what I'm getting at is Kyrandia set itself apart by doing a simple mechanic change. And I'm a huge fan of what this game does to establish its own identity as a point and click, even if it does seem inspired by other games in quite a few other ways. And I haven't even mentioned the music in this game yet. It's honestly really top notch, and one of the best point and click soundtracks I've ever heard. I mean, you can go from this to this. It's unsurprising when you consider that it's Frank Klepacki who composed this soundtrack. He's responsible for the soundtrack of pretty much every Westwood game, I think. So yeah, the iconic Hell March from Command & Conquer, that's him. The soundtrack in Kyrandia sets the mood perfectly and makes the whole thing a joy to listen to, and it accompanies the game so goddamn well.
I've used this game's soundtrack in my videos so many times. It's so varied, full of fun and hope and wonder. It's just a joy to listen to.
Anyway, after the whole gemstone debacle, you reach the entrance to the Serpent's Grotto. And who comes out of the mouth of the cave but the evil jester Malcolm, juggling a bunch of throwing knives.
So, you're the hero thrown against me. Perhaps your mother should assist you.
My mother is dead, sir, but yours lives, for surely she has dressed you.
Be careful, boy. Do not insult a man with knives.
Now here we see another interesting aspect of this game, quick thinking. This is a part in which if you don't react to the situation quickly, Malcolm will kill you. So when he throws a knife at the tree behind you, you gotta toss it back quickly and basically go along with his little game.
I leave you now, and dodge your sorrow, but I may not be nice tomorrow.
That's like me every day.
And now we enter the Serpent's Grotto. The Serpent's Grotto is easily the worst part of Legend of Kyrandia. I genuinely think that this whole part makes the game fall short of being one of the best point and clicks ever made. Let me explain. Essentially, there's a labyrinth that needs lighting up with glowing berries, but if you go into an unlit room, you die.
Oh, no!
So it's total trial and error. You need to map out the safe areas and light up other areas with berries. You can be in an unlit room if you carry a lit berry, but they fade over time. Unless you drop them on the floor, because somehow that's fine.
Brandon has really damp pockets or something. I don't know how to explain it.
Having a labyrinth is one thing, and having an unlit labyrinth is another thing. But when you have an unlit, trial and error insta-death labyrinth with nearly every room looking roughly the same, it's incredibly frustrating and maddening to play through. It's not even that easy to map out because so many areas look exactly the same. And because so many areas look exactly the same, it's easy to forget where you've lit up, which can result in a careless death. This could even happen if you have a walkthrough, and then you load a save somewhere in the labyrinth. Which room was that save in again? You can't tell from just looking, everywhere looks the same.
And when you can get confused by your own map that you created, then something is going a little wrong.
Listen, most labyrinths and point and clicks are annoying, but I think the Serpent's Grotto takes the cake as one of the worst. And it almost makes the game worth rage quitting, which is a damn shame because everything else is so good here. Every part beforehand is great and every part after is fantastic, but this one section almost ruins the game. I mean, there isn't even a huge amount to do in this labyrinth. You get a key, 5 rocks and a coin. You use the rocks to leave the grotto because the door closes behind you. You put the coin in the well to get a moonstone. You take the moonstone to the Pantheon of Moonlight where these two bickering will-o-wisps are at.
Can you take me with you?
Please, ignore her. She cannot think clearly. I am glad to see you, and would like to go with you when you leave.
They then go inside your amulet, which gives you the power of will-o-wisp, which you can then use to float across the chasm near the entrance and leave. That's pretty much it. There are very few puzzles here, but the whole thing, combined with my mapping out of the area, took me over 80 minutes. And that was my second time playing it. And it's just, it's exhausting. Anyway, on a more positive note, one thing I actually haven't really mentioned too much yet is the visuals, which are awesome. So full of life and vibrance with beautiful pixel art and smooth animations. Even if there are some frustrating parts, I really do love the way this game looks. The use of colour is especially pleasing to the eyes. I mean, apart from the Serpent's Grotto of course, which is varying shades of blood red. Once you leave the dreaded grotto, we find another forest.
If there's a merchant near here, I'll get new socks.
I don't think that's relevant in any way. Oh, well never mind, I guess he won't be needing those socks after all.
When Brandon awakens, he finds himself with a blonde woman in what looks like an alchemy lab.
So, what's in the cauldron? A potion for time travel?
No, this is my laundry.
Oh.
This woman is Xanthia, who is actually the protagonist of the second game, but let's not get ahead of ourselves here, because in this game she's just an NPC who helps you out. So this last segment is more of what I love of this game, exploring an area at leisure and solving little inventory puzzles. No mapping, no insta-death rooms, just a chilled out ride to the final battle where you can finally
kill Jester. And while I really do like the last segment of this game, I think you should experience it for yourself, rather than me telling you like I usually do and spoiling everything. Really shouldn't do that.
You know, overall, Legend of Kyrandia is a wonderful little game set in a unique fantasy universe, and it definitely stands out as one of my favourite adventure games ever made. Maybe not the best, but definitely one of my favourites. Its visuals make me happy, its gameplay makes me happy, the music makes me happy, and the story makes me happy. This game it makes me happy. The Serpent's Grotto is probably the biggest flaw this game has, but if you closely follow a walkthrough, it probably won't be too much of an issue, so that's what I recommend for that segment.
Unless you hate yourself like I do, in which case bust out that pencil and paper because you're gonna bloody well need it.
I feel like if this game didn't have the Serpent's Grotto, it'd be in my top 5 adventure games, but as it stands, it's just pretty good, maybe top 10 or top 20. It has just enough charm to stay in my good graces. I'd love to cover the sequels as well, because I haven't actually played those before, so that's an exciting prospect.
And while I don't want to spoil the ending, I do want to leave you with this last line of dialogue from the final cutscene. Enjoy.
Aren't fingers wonderful?
In the USA, it's currently presidential election season, and by mentioning that fact alone, I've already ruined the comments. But in the spirit of the season, let's take a look at one of the Sam & Max Telltale episodes that happens to be about a presidential election. I mean, it's relevant.
I haven't really touched on Sam & Max too much before on this channel. I've briefly mentioned them on a couple of top 10s, and Max appears in my intro, but I've never actually sat down and talked about what makes Sam & Max so great. So today, we're going to take a little look. But first, how about a brief history of the duo? Sam & Max started as a comic created by Steve Purcell, about a stoic crime-fighting dog detective called Sam and his hyperactive lagomorph partner called Max. In their world, they are the freelance police, given cases by the faceless commissioner, often involving some strange or bizarre happenings. Now, Sam & Max has always had a very cynical tone. On the surface, it might look like a very childish concept, but a lot of the jokes are very dry with a lot of adult humour. Even the TV show they had, which was actually meant for kids, had some rather dark humour at times.
The prison showers. Gee, if these walls could talk.
I think it's best if they keep their mouths shut.
It's for kids.
After a while, Sam & Max was picked up by LucasArts, who made the classic point-and-click Sam & Max Hit the Road. And after LucasArts cancelled the second Sam & Max game in 2004, a fair number of employees from the company started up a little company you might know now as Telltale Games.
By the way, the year 2004 has been a running joke in Sam & Max ever since then.
Telltale managed to acquire the rights to Sam & Max to make episodic seasons of the games, starting in 2006 with what would become Sam & Max Season 1, also known as Sam & Max Save the World. This first season has an overarching plotline of a hypnosis conspiracy, and the episode I'm looking at today is slap bang in the middle of that arc.
Is it smart to review the middle section of a game? Probably not, but I'm doing it anyway. You can't stop me now.
The episode in question is called Abe Lincoln Must Die, but I'll probably just refer to it as Sam & Max 104 because that's easier. There are a few things that I'll be explaining throughout, because this is the middle of a season after all, but overall, this episode is fairly accessible, and it's actually been free for years, believe it or not. So will I look at Sam & Max more extensively in the future? Yeah, absolutely. In time, I'll get around to Hit the Road, the full Telltale seasons, and maybe even the cartoon, if you really want. Although for now, we're just going to stick with one episode.
But without further ado, Abe Lincoln Must Die.
The episode begins with a creepy voice coming from a cockroach and into a phone.
I will feast on your entrails and devour your soul.
For context, this is a bug. The bug records voices. And yes, that is a pun on police equipment. As it turns out, Sam & Max were accidentally pranking the Commissioner by playing back the recording of an exorcism.
Happens to the best of us.
The Commissioner then explains that they have a new case, and that their perp this week is none other than the President himself. Also, is there anything more American than this reaction?
And he's about to introduce mandatory gun registration.
Get the keys.
And so, the mystery begins. Why is the President acting strangely? What's going on, and how come Sam & Max can just turn up at the White House? Did nobody think to pat them down before they arrived? I suppose a lot of the questions in this world can be answered with, well, it's Sam & Max.
A lot of things here don't have a reason to be the way they are. They just are.
To start with, there's no way into the White House because the door is being blocked by Agent Superball, who actually becomes a recurring character for later episodes, but that's beside the point. Why is he called Superball? Well, he's a bouncer.
Oh, Super Bowl. I get it.
No matter what you try to say or do, Superball won't let you in to talk to the President, so you have to resort to drastic measures. and call the phone next to the White House. For some reason, Super Bowl answers any call there. So, if you leave it on hold when you ring up, he will be by the phone when you return to the White House, and you can just walk in the front door.
Nobody in this universe is actually that smart at all. It's just a thing.
So now we can literally waltz into the Oval Office and see the not George Bush president being a little bit strange.
Unless they're secretly sitting on stockpiles of pudding, and oh yes, we will find them. They've got nothing to be afraid of. So in conclusion, America, get your back up off the wall. Dance, come on, marzipan, and good night.
Because this takes place in the middle of a hypnosis arc, Sam and Max aptly suspect that the president has been hypnotized. And the best way to solve this, as learned from previous episodes, is a sharp blow to the head.
I don't think that's an actual medical procedure, but I digress.
Now we have another puzzle, which is another agent guarding the president. For reference, this agent, called Chuckles, is actually a villain from the previous episode. It's not too relevant, but he is the bad guy here, and that's kinda all you need to know about him. So how do we get rid of this guy? Well, when you explore the Oval Office, you'll see a big room titled War, and when you try to enter this room, Chuckles throws you out. You can just go straight back in though. There aren't any fail states in Sam & Max. You can make as many mistakes and missteps as you like, and the game doesn't punish you for it at all. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Well, I'd say the Sam & Max Telltale series is very casual, so I think this works. It also creates this in-joke where nobody can really stop Sam & Max from doing anything.
Can we have your keycard?
Well, considering you already took it, I guess so.
Which is kinda funny. When you return to the Oval Office, a character called Whizzer has entered, who is a member of the Soda Poppers. These guys are recurring characters in Telltale Sam & Max, and they're basically the Jar Jar Binks of this universe. As in, they're annoying and kinda unfunny. But Sam & Max abuse them in nearly every episode regardless. For some reason, the president can't understand Governor Whizzer. And yes, he's a governor, and he needs someone to translate for him. And of course, Sam & Max are great translators. So then you can translate what he says, and the president will believe anything you tell him. Whizzer is of course known for his namesake, whizzing. And yes, your first thought is probably right. And so you say that he wants a drink.
I ask you, how long can this epidemic continue?
What was that?
He said, what's a guy gotta do to get a drink around here?
After having a drink, Whizzer naturally has to whiz. And remember how we got kicked out before? Yep, we get him to think that the war room is the toilet. This gets Chuckles to remove Whizzer from the room by force. And Max uses this opportunity to decapitate the president with a boxing glove. Oh.
They just don't make these guys like they used to.
That's no guy, Max. It's a damned ugly puppet.
Ah, the drawstring in his back should have been our first clue.
Ooh, political commentary.
Chuckles returns and realises that Sam and Max have foiled his plan, and so Chuckles must initiate Plan B. What is Plan B? Well, it's the statue of Abraham Lincoln from his memorial brought to life to run in an emergency election unopposed. Because who would oppose the statue of Abraham Lincoln?
My fellow Americans, I am Abraham Lincoln.
The answer, of course, is Max.
Max, we're going to make you the next president of the United States.
Yes!
And this makes for quite a strange pairing for the presidential frontrunners. On the one hand, we have a former reality TV star who says crazy things and has no political experience whatsoever, but on the other hand, we have a well-known face from a previous presidency who is likely really corrupt.
It's a good thing Americans would never have to make that choice in real life.
The next segment of this episode is dedicated to tearing down Mr. Lincoln's presidential campaign, lest he enslaves the entire populace with hypnosis. And the way you do this, I find, is really funny. You see, this Lincoln statue is just a puppet with no real political experience, and so he reads off a cue card for all his responses. What Sam has to do is sneak in some less than ideal cards. For instance, when Lincoln is pressed about taxation, we can use this poster that says, "Gimme all you got."
How would you describe your tax plan? Give me all you got.
All of these out-of-context cards, along with a scandal from one of Sam and Max's neighbours, result in nobody voting for poor old Stone Lincoln. So that's it, right? Foiled the plan? Saved the day? Nope. He throws a hissy fit and goes on a rampage throughout the city.
There's probably a political joke to be made here, but that's not my thing.
How do we stop this rampaging menace? For once, shooting him is the answer, but we're gonna need a bigger gun.
The bullets have no effect!
Namely, we need access to the war room. However, Super Bowl returns to guard yet another door. You see, the issue is there needs to be a war before the war room is open, and so, in order to progress, we actually need to start a war.
And Max has only been in presidency for about 10 minutes.
Anyway, remember Whizzer from earlier? We need him to go to war with his equally annoying brothers, but he won't do this unless we get something for him to tell the truth. Luckily, Bosco, the local convenience store owner, has some truth serum. He's also disguised as a Russian.
I am Vladimir Ilyevich Boskovorsky, Russian proprietor of Workers' Glorious Warehouse of Inconvenience, no?
No!
Don't question it.
This truth serum is insanely expensive. So, we get Bosco's convenience store registered as a historical landmark because his weenies are prehistoric artifacts.
Again, don't question it.
And in the end, it turns out that this truth serum is actually a bottle of vodka. This is one of the season's in-jokes, by the way. Bosco invents something that sounds amazing, but it turns out to be just an everyday object that can be used in an unconventional manner. So, after allocating him money for historical preservation of his weenies, he gives us the vodka.
And that might just be one of the strangest sentences I've ever said on this channel.
We can then give this vodka to Whizzer, who downs the entire bottle. This guy is hardcore. He drinks like a northerner. He doesn't even know that it's vodka. He just downs it. I'm baffled. When he starts telling the truth to his brothers, it opens up some nasty reservations between them, and then...
Of course you realize this means war! War! War!
And then a musical number happens. I'm not gonna play it extensively because last time I did, I got a copyright claim from Telltale. And to clarify, I did resolve this claim, but it still happened and it was still really weird.
Well, let's not do that again.
This moment really caught me off guard when I first heard it. I mean, I was speechless, but let's move on. So yeah, War Room. We have access to rockets, but we need a beacon on Lincoln. Luckily, the local convenience store is considered a threat to national security.
Do I even need to say it?
Head over to the store, grab the beacon, toss it at Lincoln, hit the button and bada boom. Lincoln is toast.
Well, in the end he's ahead, but not in the polls.
And so that concludes Sam & Max 104. Yeah, it does end on a bit of a cliffhanger, but this is a mid-season hook, so maybe I'll get to the rest of season 1 in time. Overall, what do I think of this episode? It's pretty good. Nothing hugely impressive, but it's full of funny moments and it definitely gives a perfect example of what Sam & Max is about and how good it's capable of being. Why is this important? Well, I mentioned earlier that 104 is a free episode, and believe it or not, this was my first point and click ever.
I'm completely serious, by the way. I didn't start with the classics, I started with this.
And this is why I always recommend Sam & Max as a starter for the genre. This little episode got me hooked on point and clicks. I mean, honestly, King's Quest would have probably scared me away, but Sam & Max is welcoming and casual with some hilarious dialogue.
There's also some pretty great political humour as well. Some lines are especially hilarious 10 years later.
Post no bills. I'm surprised this sign survived the Clinton administration.
Wow, Sam. When I picked you for vice president, I didn't know you were such a politically correct, bleeding heart liberal.
So yeah, if you're interested in point and clicks but don't know where to start, this little gem is what I recommend. There are links in the description for you because it is free.
Will I do more Sam & Max in the future? Absolutely, I'd love to, but for now, I bid you farewell. And if you're American, you've got some great choices ahead of you. God bless America. You're still here? Alright. Get off. Hold on. Alright, there we go. Well, here we are again with another bootleg movie, and last time I looked at a bootleg movie, you guys seemed to really enjoy it.
My video on Ratatoing quickly rose to be one of my top 5 most viewed videos, so there's clearly some appeal to these travesties.
So I thought, what the hell, why not terrify yourself with another awful, horrifying ripoff of a Pixar classic? What's Up?
What's Up? Balloon to the Rescue first came out in 2009, the same year as the Pixar original Up. What that tells me is that they ripped off the premise from trailers, rather than the movie itself. So I don't think we can expect an emotional gut punch or an instant classic here.
I don't want to get too bogged down in introducing the movie this time. Let's just get into it. We all know what it's based on, we all know it's gonna suck. Let's not waste any time here.
What's Up begins showing a team of monster chasers on TV, and I can't say I expected that. It introduces the main cast of characters, which includes a couple of old men, a young woman called Amanda, and an annoying kid called Guto. And as far as a movie intro goes, this is pretty lame really. Yeah, it tells us what it's about, but think about the intro to Up. That emotional roller coaster and subsequent gut punch of it. It set up the wonderful tone of that movie. This is just boring. Anyhow, it turns out that the annoying kid is watching himself and his crew on TV. Well, that's a bit rude. The kid seems upset that he isn't considered a big part of the team, and then we see a reporter talking to the two scientists about their inventions and what they do. So, why are these guys important?
I don't know. I think they're supposed to be superheroes or something, but it's not very well explained.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to demonstrate our scientific work. It'll be well worth your while.
Oh, it's Mike Pollock again. Tegman.
When I reviewed Ratatoing, some people seem to be a little accusing towards Mike Pollock for taking these roles, but really, a job's a job. You can't blame the guy for doing something that he gets paid for. So yeah, don't be harsh on Mr. Pollock, he's just doing his job. So essentially, these two science goons have turned their house and lab into a flying machine, and you'll be surprised to know that there's actually no balloon involved here. So that's interesting. Maybe there isn't actually a balloon at all. That would be a twist and a half, wouldn't it? Also, this shorter scientist called Dr. Crumb has absolutely zero tact, and basically gives away all of his scientific secrets on TV, much to the dismay of his partner Dr. Zooks, whose name is spelled like this, believe it or not.
That one's a Scrabble winner.
And given the way that they bicker and the fact that they live together, I can only assume that partner has more than one meaning.
I don't even want to imagine what awful things would happen if it got into the wrong hands.
Oh,
It's gonna get into the wrong hands, isn't it?
Apparently, this rock has the ability to hypnotize others. Well then. And I just reviewed a Sam & Max Season 1 episode, which is actually about hypnosis. Strange that I've uploaded a hypnosis-related video twice in a row.
It's almost like I've been hypnotized. Nah.
Anyway, back to Zero Tact Guy.
Nobody knows that you have to activate it with a secret password. Lavender? No one says lavender anymore. Can we change the subject, please?
You blew it, Crumb. We also get some verification that this flying house malarkey actually works, because the reporter almost launches the house into orbit. GG. The next scene shows the Monster Chaser crew having tea in their kitchen.
And get used to that. They drink a lot of tea in this movie.
You saw a housefly. Maybe I should get the fly swatter.
We also learn that Amanda really wants to go to Paris, and coincidentally...
Excuse me, pardon-moi, is this perhaps the home of Monster Chaser?
That's right.
Oh no.
I'm sorry just to be dropping in like this, but I urgently need your services.
Oh god, dear god, no.
Yeah, a French bloke turns up and apparently needs their help with a monster, but it's just so unbearably French, in such a stereotypical way.
Would you like some tea?
No, merci, I am French, we drink wine.
Like he's a beret and a striped jumper short of a full set.
Basically, Jean-Pierre, and yes, his name really is Jean-Pierre, wants them to go to the Amazon forest, and they deliberate on whether or not they can actually do that.
Besides, the Amazon is no small potato.
Potato?
Potato?
Potato.
Potato?
Potato.
The film also stokes some flames of a romance between Jean-Pierre and Amanda, which seems weird because they set up Amanda as a career-headed woman in the intro. Maybe she just has a French fetish. I don't want to get into that though. Guto decides to launch the house without consulting people, so I guess they're going to the rainforest whether they like it or not.
No can do, Uncle Crumb. We're already over the ocean.
Wow. That line splice is wonderful. I mean, you can even hear the seam.
Also, the French guy is leading them into a trap. I mean, he just wants the hypnosis power, which is completely reasonable, really.
I can't wait to hypnotize as many people as possible.
Well, on the one hand, they at least booked the British villain trope in this movie. Oh, good on them for making ground there, I suppose. The crew finally arrives at the Amazon and goes into the cave where there's supposedly a monster, and they're all wearing Ghostbusters jumpsuits here. Although Amanda just looks strange to me right now. Mostly her arms. She has like Half-Life zombie arms, it's gross. And outside of this scene, she dresses like Sarah Michelle Gellar as Daphne in the live-action Scooby-Doo, which would make this French dude, Frenchie Prince Jr. Of course, the trap then springs and Mr. Frenchie uses this opportunity to steal the rock that grants hypnosis powers. And of course, he recalls the password with ease because of that whole thing at the beginning.
Lavender.
Lavender! Maybe it's my accent, perhaps? Lavender!
You know, that's actually kind of a funny joke. I'll give him that.
And then, in probably the most random turn of events, some random guy in a hot air balloon lands, and it turns out that Jean-Pierre can control him with hypnosis. Poor guy just can't catch a break. Meanwhile, the crew are trapped and helpless in the cave, although I don't actually think I care. I mean, I just want to know what the evil French guy's up to.
I'm a genius!
I'll leave for 1 second.
Jean-Pierre drops the energized rock, which creates a portal to another dimension and releases monsters onto the world that pick up some pictures of famous landmarks and leap over to them. And yes, I'm not making this up. One of the 3 monsters stays behind and tries to attack Jean-Pierre, who is then saved by Dr. Zooks. Wait, how did they get out of the cave? No, really, they don't explain it. I think maybe the explosion freed them? Whatever. These idiots still don't suspect Jean-Pierre of any wrongdoing though. I mean, he was carrying something that he definitely should not have had that can be used for hypnosis. It's a bit of a giveaway.
Now what? Without the rock, how are we gonna get out of here?
Help me!
I've got an idea!
Oh no, not the balloon.
Flying isn't to be taken lightly.
So yeah, they use the balloon to fly the lab onwards, and they try to find where the monsters have gone off to.
What luck! Why did it have to be Paris?
But how did you discover that, Dr. Crumb? Does that supersonic radar scan that far?
No, I just put the words attack and monster into Google, and voila!
And that's actually another decent joke. I gotta say, they really upped their game for this one. I mean, this was 2 years after Ratatoing, so I guess we can kind of expect some improvement. Well then. We then come across one of the monsters bending the Eiffel Tower. Yeah, I don't think metal works that way. F-, see me after class. Crumb and Zooks easily capture the monster, but after Crumb hurts his back, Jean-Pierre manages to convince Amanda that these old men shouldn't be doing the hard work, and she agrees. Also, Jean-Pierre gives the kids some kind of rehypnol, and I'm very horrified that this is happening in a kids' film. The sleeping drug is then used on the 2 scientists so Amanda and Jean-Pierre can capture the last monster, which is terrorizing the Great Wall of China. And this monster is playing hopscotch.
Alright.
And now, through sheer incompetence, Jean-Pierre manages to break the gun used to capture them, so they're in mortal danger. And the 2 scientists who can easily solve this are drugged and asleep.
Amazing. You guys are doing great.
But then...
No one back home will believe this. Junky camera made in China. Battery dead already.
Is that a Chinese tourist making a made in China joke with noodles on his shirt?
Oh boy, is this where we're going?
Arigato.
No problem, but arigato is Japanese. I'm Chinese. My name is Ching Ling. Hello.
His name is Ching Ling.
Luckily, Crumb and Zooks wake up and help out, saving the trio from the monster, but they need a way to catch it without using the laser gun.
Don't worry, we have a foolproof plan, I assure you.
They disguised the kid as a giant Oreo? Okay, well, I mean, that sure seems safe with a giant monster around.
Now I want to see if they're gonna call me a sidekick mascot tag-along. They're gonna know my name is Guto.
Hey, what's your 4th wall, kid?
The monster is captured and I guess the day is saved, but the movie still has some time to go.
So, what will the French bloke get up to now?
We'll find out in time, but first we need some more banter apparently.
Ah, how I just love traveling by balloon.
Oh yeah, those 2 are totally married.
By chance, it turns out that the Chinese guy got trapped in with the monsters.
When we arrive, we'll get you out of there, my friend. Don't worry.
Sure.
The way the movie treats this guy is kinda racist. It's just a little bizarre.
I don't want that Chinese guy in there with my monsters. He didn't even say anything when I showed him the cookie.
Did you try showing him a fortune cookie? That could work.
What do you mean, Unc?
You couldn't make this up.
Amanda then fesses up to drugging her uncle and talks about how Jean-Pierre maybe has another agenda, like, you know, hypnosis maybe. Unfortunately, they're too late to stop him from actually taking the hypnosis rock and the crew gets hypnotized, apart from Guto. I think it's something to do with the sunglasses, but it's not very well explained, so who cares. Anyway, the monsters are freed, but Guto makes the rock drop again, so another portal opens up. Guto then tries to save the day by leading them into the portal, but sadly he can't quite outsmart the monsters now. They've caught on to his plan. And this is just silly. Luckily, Qingling is around to help out, although Guto refers to him as Beijing and China.
Beijing! China!
China. And yeah, that's kinda racist. I don't think you're allowed to do that.
I promise to give you some Moo Goo Gai Pan when we get back to the house!
Even he's tired of the underhanded stereotyping and racism in this movie. It's like, geez, who the hell wrote this?
The flash from the camera actually seems to break the hypnotic trance, and the Monster Chaser team is back in action. Oh, and remember the gear up sequence from Ratatoing? Well, this movie has one of those as well, with a snazzy background.
They really have been improving.
So the day has finally been saved. The monsters are back in captivity, and so is the Frenchman. A bit anticlimactic really though.
Boy, that was too much! Seeing the face of that Frenchman when he went into the other dimension.
Yes, I know. But it serves him right, that con artist.
Jeez, what is it with these movies and giving the villains horribly disproportionate punishments? The rats in Ratatoing get sent to a lab, and this slightly shady Frenchman gets sent to a monster dimension, where he'll probably get eaten or murdered in some horrific fashion.
Well, that's kinda horrifying.
Anyway, they all make up, and it turns out that Amanda is now dating Qingling, and I mean, good on the guy, but
But did you really have to pick someone who might be smarter than me?
I can't believe these lines were greenlit.
I thought he was just gonna make us some dinner!
Racist banter.
The movie ends showing the monster dimension, and the monster's running away from Jean-Pierre because he's unlikable.
Ah, nobody likes me. Ah, what a sad, sad fate for me.
That's how I feel after watching this movie.
Okay, but really, it's not the worst thing to come out of Video Brinquedo. Even though it's mostly awful, there are a couple of funny lines, and with a bit of script doctoring and some decent animation, this could probably at least have been mildly entertaining. What I can say for What's Up is that it tried. It's not good, but it could be a lot worse. That doesn't excuse the fact that it's mostly terrible though. I mean, if this was the first movie I'd seen from these guys, I wouldn't rate it highly, but in comparison to some of their other works, this isn't actually half bad.
So what's the moral this time? Well, I suppose it's don't trust a French person and don't drug your family. That's a reasonable core message, really. Guess what's back? Oh yeah. So, it's the month of spooks and scares, and I wanted to get a quick video under my belt before the actual Halloween special. And yes, there is going to be another Halloween special that's bigger and better than this one, so stay tuned for that. But for now, we're going to stick with something short, something sweet, and a little bit spooky.
Now you may remember that earlier in the year I reviewed a horror mod for Half-Life called Afraid of Monsters, and I ended up praising that mod for various reasons. I really do love that mod. You can check that video out here. Consequently, I thought it might be fun to get back on that train and look at something else along the same lines. The mod we're looking at today is called Cthulhu, or an Unspeakable Mod, which is a total conversion for the original Half-Life that replaces the weapons entirely, gives you Lovecraftian beasts and cultists to fight, as well as full voice acting and full levels to explore. The original release for this mod was 2006, but there's an updated version that was released this year.
I mean, hey, that sounds pretty cool, right? I mean, it's Half-Life with Cthulhu things in it. I mean, what could possibly go wrong there?
Cthulhu begins with a bunch of cultists surrounding a star, which leads to the name of the mod and its creators being displayed on a green, slimy, warping background. In green text. Good start. After this, we get some exposition with a man explaining his horrific dreams.
Each time more vivid,
more frightening.
He sees a mysterious island rising from the ocean, and on that island is a building that contains a really nasty texture glitch. I mean, come on, that's easily avoided. Just make one of the brushes bigger or smaller by a small amount. It's not difficult, guys. I mean, I can show you how to do it. There we go. No more texture glitching. It's that easy. Of course, what's actually in this building is Cthulhu, who looks, great. I mean, technically we have a gargantuan from the original Half-Life painted green with some tentacles on his face, but I can admire the creativity there.
It's hard to hire elder gods these days. Don't worry, I get it. I know they're busy. They've got a full schedule. It's all fine. I understand.
Now, if there's one thing I really like here, it's these driving sequences. They branch the story together with some exposition from our main character. Oh, by the way, our main character is called Ranulph Stafford.
Which is an unfortunate name, but I won't judge.
We find out that the guy we're looking for is elsewhere at his summer house, and this starts the main chunk of the gameplay. Now, if there's one thing this mod does incredibly well, it's atmosphere. Things like these driving sequences, the lighting, the sound effects, and creepy little hints that something is off. Then there are lots of little things like rustling bushes when you walk by and unsettling paintings. The setup here is great, but the payoff, well, we'll get to that. As you enter this spooky house, you can hear some strange noises. Although if you're as accustomed to Half-Life as I am, these noises probably don't mean much other than, zombies? Alright. You then come across a sword cane to defend yourself with, which is just as well because there's a cultist here who attacks you. And I say, attacks you. The AI on these guys really isn't great, and this is obvious as you get further into the mod as well. Quite often they just stand there and take a beating or a shooting until they die. And my other favourite thing about these guys is they basically repeat the same lines over and over, and after a while, it just gets kind of funny.
Were you at last night's summoning? I made the sacrifice myself. Were you at last night's summoning? I made the sacrifice myself. Were you at last night's summoning?
They're also just kind of goofy in general.
There is no one here. An unbeliever. Cthulhu, protect.
No. Of course, these aren't the only enemies you'll see, because we do have some zombies.
Come on.
Yep, you guys had so much content to draw from with the Lovecraftian universe, and this is what you choose. Although they do look kinda odd, like their head is too small for their body or something. Weird. Although I will give the creators one thing, the noises these guys make are pretty horrifying. Oh, and one other thing I'd like to bring up is the HUD. Now, I have no issues with the HUD itself, so this is more of a PSA, because you'll see this in place of the HUD in a lot of other Gold Source Engine games. Wanna play some opposing force? Check out this spooky loading screen, with an ugly font. You wanna play some Team Fortress Classic? Well, now you have HP Lovecraft staring up at you. Forever. Anyway, you may have noticed how far my health went down in one hit there from that one zombie.
Yeah, this mod is incredibly hard.
As a matter of fact, it's way too hard. Health packs and ammo are incredibly sparse and enemies do way too much damage here. One of the worst offenders here happens to be on the next level, which takes place in some sort of chapel. You see, at this point you only have the sword cane and this tiny knife, but this guy has a revolver and he does not want you anywhere near him. If you manage to kill him, chances are the AI glitched out and you got lucky. But the other 9 out of 10 times, he'll just unload a barrage of bullets into your already weak and squishy body. May I remind you that melee combat in Half-Life has always left a lot to be desired. You'll often find yourself hopping in and out trying not to get hit, which doesn't always work. So you're guaranteed to be at least somewhat injured when you're fighting this loon. And it's not like getting a gun fixes these issues, because, like I said before, ammo is rare here. Once you're out, you're back to shanking a dude in his chest until his AI breaks and you find 6 more bullets to waste on bat creatures in some kind of slime cave.
I'm not good with the whole aiming thing.
It's not like rare health and ammo is a bad thing in horror games, it can be a mechanic that's done well, but here, it just isn't. Afraid of Monsters does all of this so much better, and it's also a free Half-Life mod made by a small number of people. In fact, the original Afraid of Monsters mod was created by a single 14-year-old kid. But in Cthulhu, the amateur level and game design really shows through. Don't get me wrong, I've seen a lot worse. But there's a lot here that just doesn't work. I mean, there are doors that block your path when they really shouldn't, segments that are next to impossible at times without ammo, and the level design in general is very blocky. There are a lot of things here that just scream inexperienced mapper, which is kinda sad really. I see plenty of potential in the concept in some areas of the execution. It's like an experienced mapper collided with an amateur mapper, and it's actually a little bizarre to behold. Not to mention, there are cheap death traps in a couple of places. The gunplay is awkward with slightly broken auto-aim, the melee combat isn't fun because of the high damage risk with rare medkits, and the enemies end up being more annoying than scary. That being said, there are things I do like here, like for instance this one room here looks pretty tight.
What? You want more? Alright, hold on.
Okay, the general atmosphere of the mod is fairly decent. It shares the moody tone and colour palette that Dark Corners of the Earth had, which is unsurprising when you consider that both came out in the same year. But that style works well here, and I really like the town segment as a result. I also like that you have pages of writing that inform the world around you, and I definitely admire the tone that the mod goes for. But there's just a lot holding it back that I wish was so much better. I think one of the most ridiculous elements of this mod arrives with this church right here. Let me tell you what goes down. So I kill some cultists in a badly designed maze and happen across a church with a graveyard surrounding it. And that's pretty interesting, but wait, what's that in the sky? A gargoyle? Wow, a new enemy that isn't a reskin of a Half-Life monster? Let's check it out.
Wow. Now that is something.
So, you took the G-Man, gave him red eyes, horns and wings, and then made him fly unmenacingly at the player while wiggling his arms. Unbeatable. Oh, there he goes. I can't imagine this is right.
You know what? I take back what I said earlier. Please don't ever try to be original again.
This church also contains one of the most egregious difficulty spikes in this mod. Without any ammo, there is no way to take them on, and for some reason these guards up here refuse to drop their guns. So, rest in peace me. But the thing is, I can solve this. I have a really good strategy for getting around this one little area.
You saw nothing.
From here, you dig up a grave in a needlessly awkward cutscene and enter a place with, you know, I'm not sure what these are, but I'm fairly certain I've seen them before, like they're ripped out of something else. I'm sure someone else will enlighten me and say, oh, it's from this game, you dummy. But whatever, they're kinda creepy, but I've about given up on this mod by this point. Sorry. They also put in a Bionicle based on the HL2 model, and that's a big no-no from me. Sorry again. Cthulhu isn't a great mod. I can see the effort, but there's just too much wrong with the gameplay for it to be any fun at all.
It's badly balanced, the level design is dodgy, and it's just not scary beyond the first few minutes. The payoff just isn't worth it here. If you want an actual reason to play, then I recommend just looking at the G-Men flying around, because I've never seen something so graceful in my life. I'm gonna go in for another look. Welcome back to a Scarfulhu Halloween special, and it's been a while since my last proper one, so now I have some tarot cards, so that's pretty spooky. Also, to top it all off, in the most terrifying twist of all, I'm using my old camera, because I kind of broke the lens on my other one. You know, I've always loved vampires. From Buffy the Vampire Slayer to Vampire the Masquerade, I've just always enjoyed the legends, folklore and media behind these bloodthirsty creatures of the night.
Of course, the most iconic vampire legend comes from none other than Dracula, the terrifying villain of Bram Stoker's famous 1897 novel. And you probably know all of this already and are probably expecting me to go on about how he's loosely based off Vlad the Impaler. I mean, yeah, we all know he's a cultural icon. He's been in just about everything.
I'm Dracula.
Get out.
Although as much as I could get bogged down in the history of the character, I don't want to do that.
But you know me, I'm a man of action, and two of my favourite actions are pointing and clicking. So if you take point and clicks and Dracula and put them together, you get a Dracula point and click. I don't know what else you're expecting. And so we're going to have a look at a game called Dracula the Resurrection.
Dracula the Resurrection is somewhat of a cult classic among the Avenger game community. While it's not really regarded too highly from a critical standpoint, it certainly has its fans. What we have here is an adventure game in the first person, much like Myst, with, wait for it, pre-rendered, terrifying FMV cutscenes.
Think about the PS1 FMV that scared you as a kid. Now imagine an entire game made of it. Yeah, that's what we're in for right now.
But I'm not going to show you the worst of it just yet. Just you wait. There are some wonderful surprises in store. Anyway, Dracula the Resurrection is a game from 2000 that apparently has 3 developers. Index Plus, France Telecom Multimedia and Canal Plus Multimedia. Now, you might not have heard of any of these, but France Telecom Multimedia went on to become Orange, as in the phone company.
Remember Orange Wednesdays? Well, apparently it's the same company. Weird. So without further ado, let's get down to business and see what spooks and scares await us in Dracula the Resurrection.
So this game is basically a sequel to the original Bram Stoker novel, with the intro being a retelling of the ending of that novel, where Harker and Quincy attack Dracula's minions and take out the vampire himself, leading to Dracula releasing his thrall upon Mina, Harker's wife-to-be. In The Resurrection, you assume the role of Jonathan Harker 7 years after the events of the novel. Mina has disappeared, but leaves a note that describes she has gone to Transylvania, feeling summoned by the late Count's castle. Despite all requests to the contrary, Harker immediately sets off to go find her, because, well, if Dracula's thrall has returned, it's probably not good. After all, he doesn't want Mina to become a
As an intro, it's a pretty interesting setup, and right off the bat they do have me interested, so well done guys.
We begin our journey in some sort of inn, and Harker bumps shoulders with some suspicious blokes, who, if you're sharp, you'll know from the intro as Dracula's lackeys. Draculackeys. As they leave, Harker is then approached by... oh god.
Welcome, stranger. Welcome to my humble inn. I hope those 2 brutes didn't hurt ya.
I mean, I'm not going to mince words here, that woman scares me.
Honestly, all the FMV here is rather unpleasant to look at. Not only does it cross into the uncanny valley, a lot of the characters aren't meant to be lookers to begin with, and so this woman, called Barina, is horrifying. But she's at least meant to be on our side, so we've got that.
Tonight is St. George's Eve. At the stroke of midnight, all the evil roaming the world will be master on earth. Do you realise where you're going and what you will face?
You know, I'm going to give this woman a tarot reading. I've drawn the judgment card, which means I'm judging her for being in my personal space.
Also, one of my favourite things is how, after a conversation point, Barina just goes back to cooking, and it can be incredibly jarring to go from...
stay here, don't go, for your mother's sake,
to cooking up a lovely stew with a smile upon her face.
Bless her soul.
Also worth mentioning is the kind of crappy voice acting. I mean, Barina just sounds like some random woman you'd find on the street.
The peasants preferred to bury their most precious possessions rather than see them fall into the hands of the barbarians.
This feeling is especially prevalent between Harker and the old dude in the inn, though.
What do you want to do there, stranger?
I don't have time to explain, but it is very important for me to get to the castle immediately.
It doesn't fill me with much fear or dread if my main character has the emotional depth of a used teabag.
This guy doesn't want you to go to the castle either and invites you to stay with him.
You'd better stay with me, we'll have a drink together.
No thank you, I'm married.
Now if you'll excuse me, I've got to find my wife before more old men start hitting on me, because I really don't want that.
So right off the bat, the game gives you a small snowy area to explore, including a graveyard, a lake, a cross of some sort, and a bridge. Also, the bridge has one of Dracula's goons guarding it. I wonder what he has to say.
Go away! And don't come back!
You'll hear no arguments from me, mate. That's a face only an early 2000s FMV animator could love. Searching around, I find a pickaxe and a slingshot laying around. And at the graveyard, there's some weird swirly energy thing on someone's grave. People always tell me to stay away from weird swirly energy things, but who can ever resist? I then can dig up the grave with a pickaxe, because that's a thing, and find some kind of little dragon ring thing. Alright. You know, in terms of atmosphere, you actually have something quite chilling here. The fact that it's all pre-rendered is almost kind of unsettling, especially combined with exploring first person in the dark. And I actually really like that feeling. I've had an itch to play a game like this for a while now. The old guy back in the inn tells you that the slingshot is very practical and good for hitting birds. And when you show him the dragon ring, he kind of freaks out about it.
My God! You shouldn't have touched that object. Misfortune is again our lot. Beware, you don't know what powers you are dealing with. It's Dracul. Dracul the devil.
Dracul? Is this in any way related to the Count?
Let's have a think about this, shall we? We've got Dracul and we've got Count Dracula. I think you might be onto something there, Harker. Also, please back up, you're getting a little too close to the camera, dude. The next segment has you trying to dispatch Dracula's minions so you can advance past the bridge and get to the castle. Now, the first guy to get rid of is next to this cabin by the lake, and following the old guy's advice, we can hit some birds with a sling over here, which distracts this ugly mug, and then we can just hit the ugly mug over the head with an ugly club, and he falls into the water and the ugly mud. Pretty sure we just committed a murder, but we're not done yet. For our second murder, we need to use a pan flute we find at the cabin to call over the other guy, because apparently that's how they communicate with each other. The second guy walks over and stands directly beneath a big metal thing suspended by a thin rope. Total rookie error there. Yep, cut the rope and knock him straight out. Good times. My favourite part about this is how Barina comes bursting into your room afterwards.
Did you see that? The sign fell down and knocked Iorga out. Fiorel is going to be furious. I have to hurry downstairs and lock the doors. May the good Lord protect us.
Well, we may have gotten this poor innocent woman in trouble, but at least we stole some dude's keys. And we can cross the bridge now. How about that? Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot we were playing a point and click. It's never simple, is it? So instead of going across the old bridge, Harker is required to use the mines. And while we're still in the open air, I'd like to bring something up. The way that movement works in this game is a little jarring to me. Sometimes it's a little hard to get places because the path has to be very specific. It's not too difficult to find your way around, but sometimes you'll find yourself clicking somewhere to no avail, because the actual path is to go all the way around. It's not the worst, but I think it's worth noting at least. Anyway, moving forward, you discover that there are mechanisms strewn about that can be used with the dragon ring you find earlier. This mostly just sets up what this item can do, because the entrance to the mines can be found at the lake cabin. However, on your way down to the mines, the last of the 3 minions turns up with an axe and sends you plummeting to your doom. Actually, I lied. Harker's completely fine. There's no doom here. As a matter of fact, I don't think there's any way to die in this game, which almost seems like a huge mistake. I mean, if there is a way to die, I never came across it. I feel like this is a bit of an oversight because where's the peril, you know? It's not scary if I've got nothing to fear. Oh, except moments like this. The inventory puzzles in this game are rather straightforward in my opinion. Most of the solutions can be found very close by and only a handful of things can be interacted with in the first place. It makes it so the game isn't too hard, but a lot of the puzzles honestly feel like use that one thing you found in the last room on that one other thing. That being said, the dragon ring key thing is the item you'll find yourself using the most. It ends up being used in a lot of places.
Perhaps too many, actually.
There are at least some pretty good puzzles in Dracula's castle itself, especially surrounding the library, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Anyway, the mines aren't too difficult to figure out. There are a few simple inventory puzzles, and then you ride around on a minecart, which gives you this amazingly silly cutscene of Harker riding on the cart. And I mean, look at that posture. Absolutely majestic.
He couldn't stick his butt further out even if he tried.
There's one more puzzle before we reach the castle, where we need to get rid of some bats. And so you throw a lantern into a pool of oil and basically nuke the whole place, frying all of the bats. Realistically, Harker would probably die here too, but I mean, he's fine. Again.
I'm starting to think he's just invincible, honestly.
Now we find a ride to Dracula's castle, and we get a cutscene with his minions and the big man himself, making threats and being all moody like those villain types tend to be.
Oh, and apparently we're falling directly into Dracula's trap. Alright then, dude, whatever you say.
Although I do want to question how all the minions are okay. I mean, one of them I knocked out into a lake and the other had his head crushed. Does nobody die in this game? Is everybody just incredibly resilient? I'm a little concerned. Anyway, we finally make it to the castle after all that faffing about. And I have to say that this is my favourite part of the game. I wasn't so sure about the earlier parts, but like I said before, there are some excellent puzzles in this castle. To start with, in this castle, you find some sort of cell that contains a creepy old woman with glowing eyes.
I am a woman who has been rejected and betrayed. A woman who has been unjustly punished. I am Dorco.
Can we just lock her back up? I think she was in there for a reason.
This is Dorco, who kinda looks like a vampire, but I'm not sure if she actually is one. In this segment, she's your quote-unquote ally, and basically lets you know what you should be doing.
Why do I say quote-unquote ally? Well, you'll see.
You can bring items to her to ask what they're doing and such, but the main goal she sets you is bringing her a dragon medallion and an amulet. During cutscenes with Dorco, the camera moves in way too close to Harker, and I just find it amusing. It's like the animators couldn't be bothered to animate his mouth, so they just show his eyes.
Imagine a Scarfulhu episode zoomed right into my eyes.
You can also bring her this crystal ball to have it enchanted.
I don't even know if she's okay.
Apparently that's just her spellcasting face. I'm gonna level with you, I'm not into it. There's a really cool puzzle in Dracula's bedroom involving this crystal ball though. You see, there's a painting that you can mount on the wall that shows 3 zodiac cards when you use the crystal ball. And on the other side of the room is a dial with different zodiac symbols on it.
You actually have to know things about star signs to work this out, which I personally think is a cool idea.
Or if you're really stuck, they do give you a set of cards to look at. I just think this puzzle is neat. It ends up opening up this new room where you can get more items useful for the library. I mentioned the library earlier because I consider it the main hub of puzzles in Dracula's castle, but basically this is where the medallion is kept, so it makes sense. There are lots of things you need to do here involving coordinates, clocks, gemstones, and so on. It builds up in a really awesome way.
I can't state this enough. This castle has some really cool puzzles. Dracula must really like me if he's leaving puzzles like this.
Despite its terrifying exterior, Dracula Resurrection has a lot of charm, honestly. It's even apparent in the save screen, which is done entirely in first person. I just think that's neat. Anyway, once we get the medallion, we can open up the final area where we find the amulet. And it's pretty simple to get to, but then...
Who has dared?
Oh dear God.
Who are you, wretch? Put that amulet down right now, or my sisters and I will make you die a horrible death.
Ma'am, you should really be careful. You could have someone's eye out with those.
Yeah, 3 mostly naked vampire women turn up and stand there menacingly. Oh, whatever will I do? There's only this one switch to interact with. Yeah, I don't really understand the point of this segment. It doesn't feel tense when the solution is right there and you don't feel threatened. They even state that you can't be killed here because of the amulet. Anyway, the lever you pull lets sunlight into the room and the vampires flip away.
No, that's fine.
And then we meet back up with Dorco, who will tell us where we can find Mina if we give her the amulet.
Give me the amulet and I will show you your wife. You can trust me. I am a woman of my word.
I don't trust her. She's a woman of her word.
Dorko takes Harker to Mina as promised, and she's right there.
Well, that was easy.
But then Dorko locks Harker in with Mina. Little does she know, this is the tower where Dracula keeps his flying machine.
Because of course Dracula has a flying machine.
And luckily we were carrying the item we needed to open up the tower, which is awfully convenient, I must admit. Harker then takes Mina and puts her on this Da Vinci-esque flying machine, but as he does so, the vampire ladies return to make trouble. The vampires are easily fought off in this cutscene, and Harker makes a narrow escape with Mina, and I mean really narrow. Look at that. I mean realistically they probably would have just gone. But whatever, this is a pretty cool escape. And I actually can't wait to see what happens next. This is pretty exciting. Will we get revenge on Dorko? Are we going to take down Dracula? I want to know what the rest of the game is like.
What? That's it? That's all I've got? But we barely even saw Dracula.
Yeah, so this game is really short, clocking in at about 1.5 to 2 hours. But as short as it is, and as terrifying as the characters look, I enjoyed it. It's incredibly cheesy, but what more could you want on Halloween? For me, this fills a similar gap to Phantasmagoria. Although here, the puzzles are actually pretty well designed, especially in Dracula's castle. While they're not very difficult, they're not too easy either. They strike a good balance, I think.
If you want something short, spooky and silly to play for the horror season, this is probably a really good bet.
Of course, it's a real damn shame that the rest of the story is locked away in the sequel, but I reckon we'll have to get to that next Halloween.
Until then, I'm going to see what my fortune brings, so happy Halloween. Watch out for danger and stay safe. Oh, death. That's probably fine.